Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Dr. Karen Brandon, and the time is 9 o'clock. Today is Wednesday, June 25, 2025, and this is the first day of a two-day meeting of the Physical Therapy Board of California. Today we are meeting in the hearing room at the Department of Consumer Affairs building located at 2005 Evergreen Street Hearing Room in Sacramento, California. We are also meeting virtually via a WebEx component provided by the California Department of Consumer Affairs. This is an official business meeting of the Physical Therapy Board. The board's role is to maintain consumer protection and consult with local and state entities on the laws and regulations pertaining to the physical therapy industry. We will take public comment on specific agenda items, and at the end of the meeting, there will be a comment section for items not on the agenda. Public comments must be specific to the agenda item that is being discussed. If you make a comment during a specific agenda item that is not related to that topic, you will be directed to hold your comments until we reach that appropriate item on the agenda. All comments that do not directly relate to an item on the agenda should be held until the agenda item for items not on the agenda. The board follows the Open Meeting Act. So while we accept and appreciate public comments, we cannot respond to those comments. We do have a moderator from the Department of Consumer Affairs online to help us today. Individuals who are listening to the meeting will have an opportunity to provide public comment and will be assisted by the moderator who will be facilitating the telecommunicating process. For those members of the public participating via teleconference today, please wait until the moderator has introduced you before making your comments. To request to make a comment during public comment period, the moderator will direct you with instructions. The meeting is being recorded and minutes of the meeting will be prepared. Ms. Conley, can we please take roll call?
Karen Brandon.
Here.
Samuel Pugh.
Here.
Dale Armstrong.
Here.
Kala Kala. Here. Tanya McMillian. Tanya McMillian is absent. All members are present with the exception of Tanya McMillian, and the board has a quorum.
Thank you very much. I do want to take a moment to have a moment of silence for peace and for protection for those of our Californians and all across the world and in our military that are needing that today. Thank you. Dr. Armstrong, would you please read the mission statement for us?
Yes. The mission of the Physical Therapy Board of California is to advance and protect the interests of the people of California by the effective administration of the Physical Therapy Practice Act.
Thank you so much. We're going to be moving to number 4, which is our petitioner. I would like to introduce our administrative law judge to continue these proceedings.
Thank you, Madam President. All right. Well, before we go on the record, let me invite the parties to join us up here at the tables. Good morning. Oh, please take a seat.
Thank you.
And let's just do a quick mic check to make sure that everything is working. All right, it appears so. All right. All right. We are on the record before the Physical Therapy Board of California, Department of Consumer Affairs, in the matter of the petition for reduction of penalty of James Kyung Cho. The agency case number is 720-2018-001-754, and the OAH case number is 2025-050-117. Today is June 25th, 2025. The time is 9:04 a.m. This is the date and time set for the hearing in this matter, and we are appearing in person. My name is Patrice de Guzman Huber. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I am sitting here with a quorum of the board. At this time, I'll take the appearances of the parties, starting with the Deputy Attorney General.
Good morning. James Walter for the Attorney General.
Thank you. And for petitioner?
Good morning, Your Honor. Nick Webb for the petitioner.
All right. And for the record, the petitioner, Mr. Cho, is also appearing here in person. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. We are being assisted today by our court reporter, Ms. Esquivel Parkinson. Would you like to state your appearance now? Thank you, Ms. Esquivel Parkinson. So on that note of our court reporter, I just want to remind everyone and myself as well to please try your best to speak clearly, loudly, and slowly for our hybrid appearance as well, and also really for the record in this matter so that Ms. Esquivel Parkinson can follow along and make sure that our record is full and complete. All right. So we are here on this petition. The burden is on you, Mr. Cho, to prove that you are entitled to what you are seeking. However, I'm going to ask Mr. Walter to present evidence first, and that is so that the board and I can have the context and background for your petition, what led up to it. And once he is finished, Mr. Cho, Mr. Webb, you'll have an opportunity to present your case. So any issues with moving forward in that manner?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Walter, go ahead.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this point, the Attorney General has filed several exhibits. We would ask that they be admitted into the record. I can read them off for you, the titles, or I can move them as a group.
And let's do them one by one, Mr. Walter, and give us a description, please, so we know that we're talking about the same thing.
Thank you. Your Honor, the Attorney General's Exhibit A is simply the request to set this hearing and attachments thereto. We would ask that that be accepted into evidence.
All right, let's call that one Exhibit 1. Let's use numbers for your exhibits, Mr. Walter.
I will.
So we'll mark that as Exhibit 1. All right, any objection, Mr. Webb?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Your Honor, Exhibit 2 would be the notice of hearing that was served by my office on the petitioner and his counsel. We would move that into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Exhibit 3 would be the notice, the hearing notice that was sent to the petition and his attorney on June 15th. That was duplicative of the notice of hearing, but it also included instructions whether or not anybody needed an interpreter here.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Exhibit 4 would be the original petition for termination of probation filed by the petitioner.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Exhibit 5 would be the original petition for reduction of penalty that was submitted to this body on June 16th, 2025.
No objection.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
Exhibit 6 would be license certification with prior disciplinary action regarding the petitioner.
No objection.
Exhibit 6 is admitted.
The last exhibit that the Attorney General had was a certified copy of the petitioner's probation report.
No objection.
Exhibit 7 is also admitted.
There were two other exhibits that my esteemed colleague asked to be introduced as well that I can move or I can defer to counsel.
I appreciate that. Yeah, if we could certainly admit those, Your Honor, we have a brief that was submitted. I believe that was posted on the site, as well as I actually think that encompasses it because we did the petition for reduction of probation as Exhibit 5, and then we had I believe we have uploaded these as well. If we can move that perhaps as Exhibit 8, we have a letter of reference from Michelle Bonifacio, his supervising PT on probation. Oh, I'm so sorry. We'd like to move that be admitted as Exhibit 8.
So for your exhibits, Mr. Webb, we'll use letters.
Oh, yes. of
But
course.
let me confirm that I'm looking at the right things here. So I'm looking on Case Center. I do see that you've uploaded 3 items. The first item, which I'll mark as Exhibit A, is titled Cho Exhibits. It includes, on its first page, page B1, there is a table of contents. And that table of contents does reference a letter by a Michelle Bonifacio. Is that what you're referring to just now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so you'd like the exhibit titled Cho Exhibits, which I'm marking as Exhibit A, admitted?
Yes, Your Honor, please.
Any objection?
No objection.
That will be admitted as Exhibit A. And then a second upload, Mr. Webb, I see titled Cho Brief. I'll mark that as Exhibit B. Is that also something you'd like admitted?
Yes, Your Honor, please.
All right. Any objection, Mr. Walter?
No, Your Honor.
And before I admit Exhibit 2, just a question for clarification. I'm looking at its first page, the caption. I just want to make sure we're looking at the right thing, Mr. Webb. I see in the caption, it states in the matter of the accusation against, and I also see a different OAH number. So I want to confirm that you've intended to file this particular brief.
Yes, Your Honor, we did. And I did notice when you had initially read the OAH number that it differed, but it is indeed for this case. We apologize for any error.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. Exhibit B is also admitted. Any other exhibits at this time, Mr. Webb?
I think that's all at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Now back to you, Mr. Walter. Would you like to give a brief summary of the case?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we're here from a case that began several years ago, and in September 2022, the petitioner was placed on probation. He stipulated to a settlement that involved numerous allegations that were filed by the office on behalf of the Physical Therapy Board. Those allegations included charges that he had overtreated 9 separate patients, all of whom were senior citizens. They also included allegations of treatment that was given to patients that was beyond what was necessary. There were allegations concerning a physical therapy assistant that was working under his direction and his supervision who was not licensed. He was accused of aiding and abetting the unauthorized practice of physical therapy. He was also accused of failing to keep proper records, and he stipulated to a 5-year term of probation. The Attorney General urges this body to consider the egregiousness of the offenses that were given. These people who were taken advantage of, some as old as 93 years old, all resided in a skilled nursing home. They were all senior citizens, as I've said before, all were of limited mobility, and the fact that most of them were never going to recover full movement in their body was fairly obvious. Despite that, there were several months of treatment by the petitioner that served no purpose. He was accused further and stipulated to be true that he failed to supervise the assistant that I've already spoken of. And in some instances, the care provided by that assistant, who was only granted a PTA LA license at one point in time, did not ever receive a former PTA license. He was treating at this facility by himself while the petitioner was not even on site. We ask that in light of these egregious circumstances that the petitioner, who has only served 2.5 years probation so far, be denied his request for relief from probation and that the full term be extended. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Now turning to you, Mr. Webb, for your presentation. We've handled your exhibits. Do you have witnesses you'd like to call?
Not at this time, Your Honor. We certainly will refer to the statements in Exhibit A. Sorry. My voice usually carries. I apologize. And I'd like to thank my esteemed colleague for giving a background on the case. And though we certainly understand the state's position when we get that, and my client has certainly, he did stipulate, he did enter into a 5-year stipulated settlement at the time, and he can speak for himself in a moment, but he takes full responsibility for what did happen. He, has diligently followed all of the conditions of his probation, and in accordance with, BPC 11522 11522 of the California Government Code, it really reflects and encourages a strong rehabilitative purpose in licensing decisions and on probation. And, I've been in many cases where I've either had to defend or been on the opposite side of healthcare providers who have committed actual fraud. And Your Honor, this is not that. My client has made some mistakes. I think chief among them was the supervisory aspect of his PTA. There wasn't as much diligence that probably could have been done in that regard. He's the first person to acknowledge that. We've talked about this many times, and he can certainly answer questions from the court and from opposing counsel with reference to this or from the board. But at the end of the day, he's satisfied all conditions of his probation. His supervising PT, Stephanie Bonificio, has written the letter that is included in Exhibit A. I think that the court's had an opportunity to take a look at that. He has another letter of reference from Andrew Lee, who's also another PT that's worked with him. He's not currently supervising any PTAs, so he's really kind of subjected himself and kind of throws himself at the mercy of the board and really just wants to go on and try to treat patients the best that they can. But I just want to reiterate that there was no intent from Mr. Cho to go and defraud anybody or take advantage of anybody who might have been a senior citizen. He's treated many senior citizens over the course of his very long career. And at this point, he just would like to ask the court and the board to have mercy on him and allow him to continue practicing without the kind of the albatross around his neck of probation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Webb. Are you
Thank you.
calling Mr. Cho to testify?
I would like to, if he can maybe say a few words, if that's okay, Mr. Cho.
All right, Mr. Cho, before you begin, let me swear you in so we can consider what you say to be evidence and testimony.
Yes.
Please raise your right hand. You don't have to stand up. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You may need to move closer to your microphone there, or move it closer to you as well. There you go. Thank you so much, Mr. Cho. Please state and spell your full name.
James, James, Young, KY, excuse me, KYONG, Ahun, HOON, Cho, CHO.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cho. I just want to point out to you, you speak a little quickly. So let's, and you may be nervous, and I don't mean that pejoratively. If you are, please don't be. Take your time to tell us what you'd like to tell us, but I want to make sure that you're speaking clearly, loudly, and slowly. And again, that's for us to be able to follow what you're saying and for the record to reflect what you're trying to tell us here today. I want to make sure we're not missing anything you want to say. Does that make sense, Mr. Cho?
Yes, thank you.
And just one more note, let's try not to interrupt each other. And so when somebody is speaking, make sure that that person is completely done stating what they want to say before you start replying, Mr. Cho. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Webb, do you intend to ask questions of Mr. Cho?
I think at this point, Your Honor, I'm more interested in him just kind of making a general statement and allowing you and the board to ask any questions that they have.
All right. So Mr. Cho, I'll allow you to testify in what's called a narrative format. And that's just a kind of a free flow narrative. You just tell us what you think we need to know about your case. Once you're done, just be prepared that you may receive questions. Mr. Walter may have questions for you and the board may have questions for you as well. So just keep that in mind as you're testifying. Does that make sense, Mr. Cho?
Yes.
All right. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and start.
Oh, yes. I'd like to give a little background. I've been in therapy almost 40 years now. I started as an aide in 19. And practicing wise, I've been a therapist for 32 years. So, and then in terms of the field, I have the utmost respect and care for this field. Starting from, I did a master's in physical therapy. I finished a PhD in exercise physiology. I was an assistant professor at KU Medical Center. I helped establish their stroke center there, the Landis Center of Aging, which my research assistant currently is the chair, Sandra Billinger. So I have the utmost care and for patient care. For this case, I don't use PT license applicants much. So but in this case, I used one, and I had his license applicant status. A month later, he passed his boards. But I was to find out later, and I didn't check right away enough, but that he had not been issued the license because of a issue with the DUI reporting, he said. So after that, of course, I found out, I let him go. This was about, honestly, like 5 months later. I should have done sooner, and I really regret that. But I've never expected somebody to say that, and he did pass. And actually, he was awarded his license a year later after that. But this was in 2018 or so. And he practiced until the following year later, the board and the Consumer Affairs came out to the building. And they did a thorough 2-year investigation on that building and me. Of course, he hadn't been there for over the year, and he was working actually for somebody else. So after the 3 more years of investigation, they allowed him to continue to work. So I have no intent of misleading or endangering patients at all, but I should have had the utmost care in providing and asserting licensure status, and I really regret that. And currently, like I said, I've practiced for many years very diligently up to this point, and I sincerely request that this will never happen again, of course, and the reduction of sentence so that I may continue on with my life. Maybe even near the future, I hope to do other things as well. Like I said, I've done this 32 years as a therapist, and I earnestly request that the probation to be completed. That's pretty much, I guess, where I stand.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Cho.
you.
All right, Mr. Walter, any questions?
I'll be brief, Your Honor, but yes. Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
Regarding your PTALA gentleman, I'm not going to mention his name out of respect for his privacy. He's not here before us. And the accusation that you have stipulated to that was true and correct in paragraph 65, it states, during his treatment of these patients, and I'm going to skip his name, represented himself as a licensed physical therapist assistant, for example, by signing his treatment records as his name, PTA. Now, you were the person who was supervising him, correct? You were the person who was supervising the records that he maintained.
Yes, I go to that building frequently. Daily, I still supervise that building. All the assistants and the therapists, so on, they text me. Now that I no longer, of course, supervise that building for the last 2+ years, but every day they text me early in the morning and I head out. So yes,
But he was signing his name as with a PTA after it, correct?
yes,
And you didn't ask for a copy of a certificate or
yes.
anything, correct?
For those months, yes, because I assumed, and then I checked after that, and then I found out, yeah.
Now, this gentleman treated patients on more than 320 occasions without a license, correct?
I assume yes, during that time.
Is that,
Well,
Yeah.
yes, but I didn't know.
there are a number of dates listed in the accusation. Again, you stipulated that they are true, and that is still your statement, correct?
Yes,
As I said earlier, 9 separate patients were part of this accusation, correct?
yes,
All of them were at least age 65, correct?
yes.
Some as old as,
I assume I don't know the patients per se.
Repeat what you'd said,
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Cho.
yeah, so I would have to assume, because I have to know who they're talking about.
they were all at Good Shepherd
Care
Correct.
center, it's a nursing home.
skilled nursing home or simply a nursing home?
It's a skilled nursing home.
All right, and again, you were accused of overtreating them repeatedly, correct?
Yes,
And overbilling them, correct?
yes,
On several occasions, the investigator noted that you had not performed any kind of a reassessment of any of these patients, correct?
yes,
And you continued to bill them for several months after they had reached maximum improvement levels, correct?
yes,
You have been on probation for about 2.5 years now, correct?
yes,
Your probation is scheduled to end in September 27, is that right?
yes,
And when you moved to have your probation terminated, you did it almost exactly at 2 years after you were put on probation, correct?
yes,
Right, that was the minimum amount of
Yes.
time?
The restriction that was placed on me was a 1-year restriction on supervisory. So currently, the only restriction that's placed on me right now is patient notification. So I only was given a 1-year restriction on supervision. That was lifted after the first year.
So your you've been asked, according to the terms of probation, to continue to notify patients for the next of your status, correct?
Yes.
And I note that you have performed the terms of probation. You've met with your probation officer repeatedly, correct?
Yes, every quarter.
But the only restriction that you consider as an impingement on your practice currently is just the fact that you have to notify patients of what you did?
Per se, and then also I have to work. Currently, my setting of work is at the clinic. And mandatory restriction is that I have to work at least 20 hours a week.
Okay.
And because I've done this for 32 years as well, and I would like to have the option of, yes, kind of, retiring a little later.
All right, back to the terms of probation. I don't want to go through all of these things. You've already stipulated that they were true and correct, everything in the accusation. And if I asked you questions of each and every term, your answer would be, that is correct. Is that right?
Yes, it's a 2-year, like I said, an investigation of every single patient that was seen in that nursing home. And some patients, they have the right to be treated. They have their Medicare A patients. They have 100 days qualifying, and a lot of times, even with the Sebelius case, they was said that if you can you keep from decreasing, plateau and so on, but if you at least keep from decreasing, it's still skilled service. And they have the insurance and they have the qualifying for service.
I'm not going to go over that again, but I just want to wrap up here. Last few questions I have. Did you self-report the fact that a PTA LA was treating patients without a license?
At the time, the gentleman in question, he was an Air Force grad. He had just finished. He had a son that the wife had left. He was supporting this son. And he said that if he had the ability to continue to practice if he was supervised for another year. For, this reporting was done maliciously, I believe. I do contracting work. At the time, the other buildings were, this was, I believe, he was a good guy. He was working hard and he said there was an issue. That's why he got his license, because even without any remediation, he had his license in place. He told me he got his license because, it was a misrepresentation, a misreporting, but it was completely taken away now because, he did work those periods.
Right. But sir, my question is, did you self-report the fact that a unlicensed physical therapy assistant was providing care under your direction?
Like I said, he told me he got his license. He would get it with supervision. He was a misreporting. He was a good guy.
But you didn't report that, did you?
No, sir.
You didn't report to Medicare that he was providing care before you were investigated, correct?
Yes, sir. Because, like I said, it happened a year later. That the report, somebody reported it a year after he was no longer there. And yeah, I know you had, well.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Now let me turn to the board in case the board members have any questions. I'm going to start to my left. Dr. Armstrong, any questions?
So, could you clarify, Dale Armstrong, Physical Therapy Board member, could you just briefly clarify when you knew? Because in reading through all of the
Right.
documents, it was stated that you didn't know, but you just testified that you did know, but you were compassionate.
What
towards-
happened was, yes, like I said, about 4 or 5 months later, after he was hired, as a PTA, like a PT assistant at around, I think it was like May or so, when he passed his board, and then I think it was like October, November, when I confirmed, because I was checking again to confirm it. And that's so around that time. It was 2017.
Okay, so, but at that time you didn't report it.
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you for your answer. I do have another question. What is the protocol at the clinic, the skilled nursing facility, for how often a licensed physical therapist sees the patient when the PTA is doing sessions? So how often does the PT?
I did a
Mr.
weekly.
Mr. Cho, just a moment. You have to wait
Oh, I'm sorry.
until the question is finished. Dr. Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you. So I would like to know the clinic's policy and your policy on how often a PT interfaces and reassesses each of those patients, each patient in the facility as a PTA is treating. Because PTAs cannot reassess.
I did
And
a
with
weekly
medic,
conference.
I'm
so
not
sorry.
finished. PTAs cannot reassess. So how often do PTs see the patient?
I would go to the facility 2-3 times a week at least. If there was an eval, so every week we had a set conference on that patient and see the patient.
Okay, so was there a conference or did a PT actually go in and physically see the patient and reassess?
Both conference and see.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. Mr. Q?
Yes, and to people member. One question regarding, does the facility itself has policies and procedures in terms of when a PTA is hired, the qualifications, due diligence are done on their licensing?
If they were hiring their own therapists. But most facilities, they contract for therapy so that the company would be responsible. Because, so generally, the facilities, they would contract to the companies generally.
So when were you becoming aware of that the PTA was not licensed?
Yes, so like I said, about 4 or 5 months after. Because, like I said, it's very rare, I use an assistant, licensed assistant. And then for that school, I've actually monitored a lot of their students before. And then there was less actual getting the license versus just looking it up on the board platform. And so I asked him, and for that time, and then I checked, double checked, and then that's when he told me he had not officially, he was fighting it, I guess, and that he would get it if the year of supervision, but that's when I asked. So I was as careful as I should have been. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Brandon?
Thank you. Mr. Cho, to your knowledge, are you the only physical therapist that worked or interfaced with this PT assistant LA?
In that building, yes.
Okay. So did you have any reference to, were there other physical therapists at that building?
We had 2. Andrew was one, and then the other one. It's a long time ago. I forgot her. I think Lauren.
Did you have other physical therapists that had physical therapy assistants that also saw patients in that building?
No.
Okay. And how many years did you practice in that capacity at the skilled nursing facility, only coming to the facility
For
during
that
these
facility?
times? Yeah.
Um,
Well, not for that facility, but
in
over-
general,
Yes.
I started out as a float physical therapist for Sundance in Seattle. So over 25 years. I nursed in nursing home settings.
Was that the same model that you used for 25 years where you were not at
No,
the
I-
facility, but you would come in and review the records do the consulting with the PT assistant and then leave?
A lot of times I was the only PT actually. Because, like I said, it's very rare to use a licensed applicant. And so in most settings, like I traveled as a traveling therapist for 4 years in Mississippi, and then I was the only PT in most settings.
So that you were not using an assistant is what you're saying?
Generally, no.
Okay. How do you practice now?
Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at the outpatient clinic.
Okay. Do you have an assistant?
No.
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 My other question pertains to your understanding, if you can kind of share, the case indicates that there were patients that were not treated, undertreated, potentially overtreated. Can you give me insight into your understanding of what that might do to, or who that might impact?
Undertreated or overtreated?
Well, in terms of not getting the treatment that they had documented.
Well, yeah, you can get skin breakdown, contractures. Like each skin breakdown would cost, I remember like I did skincare in Mississippi, $100,000 just to fix a little stage 2 or 3. So if you left somebody, and then the contractures and decreased mobility, breathing even, issues.
I think I want to restate my question. In terms of the problem of having the PT assistant document and you sign off on things that did not get done, what is your understanding of the impact and who did that impact?
I don't see, what I mean? Like I trust the PT assistant to do the treatment. So they're licensed per se too. So I just generally most PTs co-sign assistant work.
How has this experience changed your practice now?
It's very humbling, very humbling. Yes, and I really regret not having, like I said, even the model for that building has completely changed. We've gone completely computer, so we don't miss things like the reassessments and so on. And even the computer system you have to put in their licensure information to be able to actually, work. So, and then you keep that up to date, like, every other year. Or they'll let you know if the license is not up to date, you cannot bill or you cannot see because, the patients will not come out. So, yeah, so I've updated a lot in terms of, documentation and so on.
And how does that trickle down to how you interface with the assistant or in the
Well,
future?
Yes, I would be diligent, making sure everything's done well.
No further questions.
Thank you, Dr. Brandon. Dr. Khalaf?
Tala Kalaf, board member. I just have a question for Mr. Cho. In terms of meeting with the PTA to go over plans, is there anything scheduled on a weekly basis or monthly basis just to review the cases that you and him have together to just make sure that you're not over-treating or under-treating?
I haven't really supervised for the last 2-3 years per se, but yes, before we would try to do it end of the week.
And did you get the chance to flag any particular cases, let's say, in light of the accusation of over-treating the 9 patients?
Again, the overtreatment is in terms of days, because generally it's considered, like the 100 days, so on, right? The Medicare days. So at some point, it's like, okay, if you don't treat enough, then there's a lot of other issues too, right? I mean, the patients don't get what they're supposed to either. So, um, so overtreatment is, like I said, in terms of like going toward the 100 days usually, which they're allowed to do technically, and also Medicare gives them the Part B even after you finish because they don't want, them to decline, with contractures and so on, right? Because, they don't want them going back to a hospital, which 1 day or 2 days in the hospital would be a lot worse than getting a whole month in a nursing home. In terms of everything, right? Getting, hospital diseases, getting, um, costs, 10 times the costs. So, um, like especially during COVID times, it I mean, in general, right? They want to stay at the nursing home as much as you can versus going to a hospital. You don't want to spend another day at a hospital, which would be worse for the patient than 1 day at you know what I mean? I mean, a month in a nursing home.
Sure. And are there any cases that can be treated and can be on a good, let's say, preventative or maintenance program that are less than 100 days that you've
Well-
noticed in the nursing home?
Some are less, some are more, right?
Mm.
And then, a lot of times they come back and forth. The hospital, we've had patients that go like 30 days, 60 days, they come back. And then they get another 30 days or so on until the Part A ends. And then if they need it, they go to the Part B. But, so the 100 days is kind of, I mean, they come back and forth a lot of times.
Mhm.
So even though you say you treated 100 days, that's necessarily not the 100 days at one time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kalof. All right, and let me just, okay, Dr. Armstrong, go ahead.
I have just a couple more questions. So can you explain the late assessment entries and also the failure to reassess?
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't diligent enough. I should have been up to date on those. But yeah, so I'm being utmost care now with like I said, everything's computerized. I wasn't on top of those.
Okay. Thank you for taking responsibility. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And then you just mentioned COVID, which is very, very valid. However, in the original documents reviewed in 2022, the patients in question were treated between 2017 and 2018, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody else on the board? Mr. Q?
I do have a follow-up question. I want to get a clarification on how I just heard about overtreatment and undertreatment. Is that more of a clinical determination that's a responsibility that's with you or with
Well,
the companies that actually treat the patient, responsible for the patient? I mean, how would the revenue concerns be part of the clinical treatment standards?
well, it's up to the clinician per se, right? I mean, in terms of they're the licensed ones, once they do the assessment on the patient, they can determine and then so on, right? The terms of treatment. In terms of, payment issues, again, you want them to stay at a nursing home versus a hospital or send them home. And sometimes you get, instead of one person sick, you might get more, the caregivers.
Well,
So,
my question, I guess, is it's medical necessity, right?
right.
I mean, whether the revenue connection I don't know how that would be I know in business practice that may be a connection that is made by the skilled nursing facility or is a concern of Medicare. However, it would have to be, in my mind, be predicated on the medical necessity part of it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Q. Anybody else on the board have further questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. Let me just turn to the attorneys one more time to confirm. Mr. Webb, did you have any redirect?
I would like to, Your Honor, just a few brief questions, and I'd like to thank Your Honor and the board for asking very engaging questions, and my client appreciates it as well, the opportunity to respond. Just a couple clarifying questions, Mr. Cho. I know that we had a lot of questions and spoke a lot about finances, billing, stuff like that, but and I know you're nervous. I can't put words in your mouth, but I know that when we had spoken previously, one of your big concerns was that you said that you felt bad that somebody theoretically from a patient care perspective, right? You said that that was more important than really the billing at the crux of it. Is that still your feeling, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, I really believe that the patients deserve what they're allowed to, receive. But, I guess, right now, I, that's a hard issue too, because nursing homes are nursing homes too. But yes, I feel like I believe that the patients deserve what they should.
Mhm. And was it ever your intent to cause any harm to any patients?
In no way was that at all.
If you knew that the PT assistant wasn't licensed initially, would you have allowed them to practice with
N-
or under you?
Never, sir, because it's happened before, of course. Like I said, it's rare, but I've used PT license applicants. They come and say, I didn't pass. I say, okay, then, wait till the next cycle, right? Till you're past your board. Nobody in all these years have ever said that, they, because even in school, it's ingrained. If you don't pass your boards, you wait out to the next cycle. And it's ingrained in the profession that if you don't pass your board, because you don't want to risk your hard-earned license.
Mhm.
So, in cases that's happened before, everybody always says, oh, I didn't pass. Then they say, okay, then wait your last cycle, and then, that's it. And then, of course, there'll be somebody else.
Okay, thank you. And then I know there were at least two questions from the board regarding well-founded, I might add, around the kind of the timing around when you had found out. Could you kind of clarify for the board and for our administrative law judge what you did once you found out?
I asked him for his license. And then when he said, oh, yeah, I'll bring it to you. And then I looked it up, and then I didn't see it. So then I let him go. And then, like I said, later on, I found out he was hired by another company, though, because he had the license then.
And if you could have done it differently, would you have reported this board after finding that out?
Yes, again, he explained that, like I said, he was a single father. He's supporting a son. He needed a job. I mean,
Right, but from a responsibility standpoint as a PT, would you have reported that to the board?
yes.
Okay. And I know when one of the board members had asked you whether or not there was an impact of this, you had acknowledged there was an impact. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you stated that do you take full responsibility for what's happened?
Yes, I do.
Um,
I regret it, and I'm sorry, and I do.
Would you be much more diligent going forward?
Of course.
And have you, to the best of your knowledge, fulfilled all of the conditions of probation to this point?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And have you completed about half a dozen continuing education trainings to this point?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And I guess my last question for you is, what do you want the board to know about why you should get your full licensure back? If you had to say it.
Like I said, I've been in this profession for so long. It's, I will really have, the autonomy of practice again, the ability to work and, have pride, not to explain to patients why I'm having them sign the notification. Like I said, insurance have dropped me. And most importantly, like I really would like to be able to be an autonomous, PT again.
And I lied. One last question. What did you learn?
Be step by step, diligent, don't make silly mistakes. Or not silly, I'm sorry, but don't make this kind of mistakes again.
Why?
Because it's in the long run, it's more detrimental for everybody. If it was done at the time the way it should have been done, then yes, it would not be the way it is.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Mr. Walter, any recross?
Thank you. Briefly. Sir, again, you knew your licensed applicant was signing his name PTA, correct?
Yes, I even had him, sign a contract saying that he was licensed, he had to get his insurance and so on at the time of his practice starting.
But you knew that was not true before this investigation began,
Um,
correct?
Yes, after the time that the,
And again, you did not self-report that, correct?
no, I did not.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Walter. Let me just check with the board. It doesn't look like anybody else has questions. All right, and may this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Webb. Thank you, Mr. Cho. Any other witnesses, Mr. Webb?
No, Your Honor.
All right, do you rest?
We do at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Anything further from you, Mr. Walter? I
No,
suppose
Your
not.
Honor, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, that takes us to closing argument. The burden is on you, Mr. Cho, Mr. Webb. So I'll let you begin. Mr. Walter, if you have a statement, you may give it next, and then you'll have the last word, Mr. Webb, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor, and members of the board. Again, we appreciate your time today. As I kind of mentioned in my opening statement, my client fully accepts responsibility. He's not the slickest talker in the world. I think that's apparent in kind of answering the questions. That's okay. Even he acknowledges that. But the bottom line is that he has served 2.5 years of probation diligently without a hitch. He hasn't had any violations of said probation. Even as opposing counsel had asked, my client's met with his probation monitor. He's satisfied all conditions. He's tried to rehabilitate himself through continuing education. He's had a good relationship with his supervising probationary PT as well as his other PT colleague, which had both written letters, as you see in the exhibits. But really fundamentally, at the end of the day, he acknowledges what he did. He takes full responsibility for it. And he's, said as much in terms of the fact that he's concerned about patients, right? The billing is obviously important. We want to make sure that, nothing inappropriate is done with billing because that's something that, we take very seriously. But at the end of the day, I don't think that he really intentionally went out of his way. I think he should have been more diligent. He, again, has noted that several times. I think that's been apparent, and he's said it himself on the record. And if he could have done things, again, differently, he would. I think he's to the point, as you can see, because he's thought very carefully about, when he said things. It's been a big change for him. He's learned quite a bit from this experience. And we don't think that there's a risk of this happening again or him being a danger to the public in the capacity of having a full PT license. It was, an isolated set of incidents for which we think he's atoned for. And we're, happy to certainly, provide the board or Your Honor with any additional information that might be needed. But at this time, we would humbly ask that he have his license reinstated. Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, the probation be
I'm sorry.
terminated.
Yes, the probation be terminated. My apologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Need more
Webb.
coffee. Thank you.
Mr. Walter.
Thank you. We, the Attorney General, would ask that the board continue probation the full 5-year term. If this were a race, 10,000-meter race, we would be halfway. He is doing well on probation, but that is to be expected. And in fact, in the In re Gossage case cited by my opponent, that was one of the things that the Supreme Court said. People on probation are expected to do well. That's why we have it. The nature of these offenses was pretty awful. Taking advantage of senior citizens, overbilling them, overtreating them, allowing somebody who did not have a license to treat them, oftentimes without any supervision, is a risk that the public deserves not to face. This cannot happen, and it did happen. And we found out today that, in fact, the petitioner knew what was happening, knew it happened before the investigation was concluded, and did not report it to anyone, including Medicare, who was paying for the bills for this care. This is not the kind of case that somebody should serve the bare minimum amount of probation for. The offenses were awful. They took advantage of very vulnerable people, and the Attorney General would ask the court, for all the reasons stated herein, for all the evidence, which I'm sure you've all read at one time or another, and I don't want to belabor again, to simply finish what we started. He was given 5 years instead of a revocation. That was the mercy he deserved. He has earned it so far. Let him continue to earn it. But going off of probation after 2.5 years does not send the right message for offenses like this. We would ask the board, again, simply to finish what you started, impose the 5-year term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Mr. Webb, any last words?
Everything that, opposing counsel has said is pretty true. I would say that I don't think that my client went out of his way to defraud anybody, particularly senior citizens, and he'd probably say the same thing himself, my client, that is. He did make some mistakes. And, he did enter into a stipulated settlement. And at the time, that was what the board and an administrative law judge signed off on, which is and continues to be appropriate. However, as much as, probation serves its purpose of being what that is as well, probation, there is a reason that we allow for early termination of probation as well. Case law and statutes support that as well. And so, he's completed education, he's served and has had no issues, and there is a mechanism in this case legally for him to end his probation early. And because we believe he satisfied those requirements, we'd humbly ask that he have his termination ended early. That's all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. All right. Is the matter submitted, counsel?
Submitted.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. With the matter being submitted, the record is closed and the board will convene in closed session to deliberate and determine what its final decision will be in this matter. So, Mr. Cho, you won't be getting your decision today. It'll be a little bit of time before then. But if you need any updates, I think you can contact board staff, or Mr. Walter may have updates for you as well. All right. Anything that we need to discuss before we go off the record, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
I think we're good, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. With that, we are off the record. In just a moment, let me check with our court reporter when she's done catching up, if she has any clarifications or spellings that she might need.
Gossage, Gossage.
I can provide those to you here. Michelle, Michelle, last name Bonifacio, Bonifacio. Second letter is Andrew Lee, Andrew, last name Lee, Lee.
Great, thank you. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Brandon.
Thank you, Your Honor. We are now going to go into closed session. Item on the agenda 5, we would like to return at 11 o'clock. It is 9:59, and thank you for joining us. Hey, welcome back. Again, this is the board meeting for the PT Board of California, first day. We are going to be continuing on. It is 11:03. Our agenda item next up is number 6, approval and review and approval of the March 18 to 19 meeting minutes. It's on now. Yeah. Do you need me to repeat it?
It will show up. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Kim Razakis, and I'm going to give a brief introduction about myself. I'm Kim Razakis. I'm the Board Relations Liaison for Physical Therapy Board. I've been with the state of California since 2007. I started as a student assistant, and I've been with this board since December of 2016. My responsibilities, I guess, here are I help all the members on board, off board, training, travel. I do per diem. I submit travel reimbursements. I don't know what else do. I do the meeting minutes. I do the board meetings. I think anything that you guys need help with, I'm here. Might be forgetting a bunch of stuff, but yeah, I'm here for you guys if you guys ever need anything. And I wanted to thank you guys all for also serving the board and taking time out of your day, personal time to help the board and assist us. So yeah, thank you. And if you guys are ready, I'm going to start with the March 2025 meeting minutes. And I'm going to start on page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Page 16.
I have a suggestion. On page 16, line 141, I have a suggestion to place a period after the word savings and then cap the word the.
Thank you, Dale. Page 17. Page 18.
I have another question. So lines 214 through 216, I just was wondering if you could take a look at that
Okay.
sentence and rephrase. It didn't convey what I think
Okay.
it was supposed to convey.
Page 19. Page 20. Page 21. Page 22. Page 23. Page 24. Page 25. Page 26. Page 27. Page 28. Page 29. Page 30.
Yes, I have a change. Line 686, change the word expressed, put an ED at the end, so that would be expressed.
Thank you. And page 31.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there a motion to approve the board minutes from March
Motion.
with the updates? Any discussion? Okay, not hearing any public comment? Not having any public comment online with the moderators?
All right, WebEx is open for public comment on agenda item 6. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. For our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... in order to find your hand. Our first request is coming from Drew Fisk or Fisky. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, Drew, we're going to try again. We're sending you a second request to unmute your microphone. You should have a prompt which says unmute me in the center of your screen. If you're on a mobile device, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the dot, 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 in order to find the prompt. If you still wish to make a comment, put that hand back up for me, please, so I know that we're having technical difficulties instead of you trying to take back your desire for a comment. All right, I think we're ready to proceed. Oh, hold on just a moment. Drew, are you with us? Drew, I see you've unmuted. Are you with us? Right next to your mute button, there's a little down arrow, and you can select from different audio inputs, speakers and microphones, if you're having trouble connecting. All right, we heard something. Try that again, Drew, please. Hi. Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
Hello. I'm speaking on behalf of the California and to the comment on REC March meeting, particularly the discussion around dry needling. California patients do not have access to dry needling unless they leave the state. It's not accurate. Dry needling is performed by a licensed acupuncturist as part of comprehensive care, and patients can access it here in California legally and safely. It is misleading to suggest the technique is unavailable when it is already practiced under proper licensure and oversight. And I urge the board to ensure the record reflects that distinction. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments? Any other public comment or online public comment?
That was our only request for public comment online.
Okay, thank you. I would like to go back to the motion on the table, and can we take a vote?
Karen Brandon,
Aye.
Sam Q,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Tala Kalaf,
Aye.
Tanya McMillian. Tanya McMillian is absent. 4-0, motion carried.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. Thank you again. Great minutes. Appreciate all that you do for us, Kim. Thank you so much for everyone's patience in this process. We are dedicated to ensuring that all members of the state of California and different stakeholders have the opportunity to interface with us as the board. And so therefore our teleconference program is working and up and continue to work with our moderators to help be able to have your public comment opportunity. We are moving on to the next agenda item, number 7, which is President's Report. And I am pleased to be introducing our new appointee, Dr. Kalaf. We would like to go ahead and get to know a little bit about you. I'm going to turn this over to our Executive Officer, Jason Kaiser.
So just to continue off of that, a little good news. The appointment position that was previously held by Dr. Daniel Drummer has been filled by Dr. Tala Kalaf. of San Carlos. Dr. Califf has been a senior physical therapist at the Stanford Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Physical Therapy Clinic since 2008. Faculty member of the Physical Therapy Residency Program at Stanford Healthcare since 2014. A self-employed concierge physical therapist since 2017, and the co-founder of Physio Hand since 2020. Dr. Califf holds a doctorate of physical therapy degree from Massachusetts General Hospital and a Bachelor of Science degree in physical therapy from the Ohio State University. Welcome, Dr. Califf. We really are happy to have you here today.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
I think we'll go ahead and do your oath now. Are you ready?
To the front, so just around the side.
Okay, follow me. This fine?
Switch the microphone. Nice. You good. I just put that microphone this direction.
Okay, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Tala Kaleff,
I, Tala Kaleff,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
that I will fully support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
to the Constitution of the United States and to the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
which I'm about to enter.
which I am about to enter.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. All right, well, we are starting to feel very whole, not having holes, but feeling more complete. And we are also going to continue to discuss under President's report, the adopted meeting calendar for 2025. Jason, do you have any updates on this schedule changes?
So just a couple of things for consideration for the rest of the 25 calendar. This board will be entering into the sunset process with the legislature. We've kind of talked about this before, but as it's becoming closer in preparation, one of the things that you will probably see in the very near future from staff is a polling system to look for additional availability dates in the month of, well, we'll probably poll for August, September, October, and November for additional dates. We already have a pretty big commitment in September. An existing board meeting. I'll touch on this a little bit more in the executive report about the sunset process itself. We have not received this legislative session's questionnaire. And in my experience, we could receive that anywhere from now to the first week of September, right? But inevitably, we're going to have to prepare a report to present to the legislature due by January 1st. So in March next year, we'll be testifying before the legislature as it pertains to that report. So there's a lot of prep. Most of the staff and I will help with that. But calendar-wise, if you could start thinking about any particular dates that you definitely could not or already have obligations to, when we send out the polling mechanism, please record those so that we can try to find something that's in alignment with everyone so that we can have that participation. Now, there are some options to that, and I might call on Michael to speak to them, but should the board, president or the board as its entirety wish, you may consider putting together a committee, and the committee to assist in preparing the report for the legislature that would work with staff. There are a few pros and cons to that. One of the pros of that being is that the meeting restrictions for a committee are slightly more amicable to the work, in the sense that the committee can actually participate remotely. And so we might be able to, just logistically speaking, be able to put things together a little bit easier in that regard. But I also, this is also a report that is the product of the board in its entirety. So I think at least the addition of a one date, possibly 2 dates to the existing 25 calendar is what I would recommend.
Thank you. I do believe that would you like to share anything, council, regarding the possibility of putting together a committee and how it's been done in the past?
Sure. So for a committee, if it's a committee of 2, we're not required to have public meetings. If it's a committee of 3 or more, because it's an advisory committee, there is a different procedure that can be followed under the Open Meetings Act that would allow for a fully virtual meeting. Was that the only thing you wanted me to address?
And just the reason I bring that up is short schedule, logistics, that kind of thing. If there was a committee of 3 members, that could be a completely virtual meeting. We would just have to provide a point of access publicly here in this hearing room, should the members of the public want to participate. But your presence as members would not be required in the same room. You could participate remotely at that point.
Great. I think we'll kind of, when you go over it in the executive officer agenda item, we'll kind of have a better understanding of what's required from the board members, and then make a discussion about that. About the actual sunset report, you had mentioned earlier, or in the last board meeting, that some of the boards had already gone and completed. And so we're at the end of that group, right? It seems like we're towards the end.
It's a reoccurring cycle.
Mhm.
And so the legislature takes chunks of the Department of Consumer Affairs in this session as opposed to the next session. So, and that can be dependent upon each individual board and its sunrise date, right?
Mhm.
So this board has always received a 4-year extension on their sunset dates. So it's more reoccurring to us, but you might see the legislature ask for a board to come back around for sunset review, maybe sooner than that, given certain circumstances, issues that board might be facing. So the calendar is not static. It mixes itself up. It churns a little bit.
Mhm.
The group that we're about to go in is not the same as the group we went in last time, if that says anything, because of the dates being offset. Some had 3-year extensions, some here 2-year extensions, those kind of things. So we're going in a larger group this time around. And again, it being cyclical, it always seems like, we just came out of sunset and now we're starting to prepare for sunset. And that is the nature of sunset.
Understand. We have our upcoming September meeting on the books in Southern California. And can you share a little bit also about the additional scheduled training?
So for our September meeting, it's going to be a long meeting for us. Loma Linda, thank you for hosting that meeting. But we're also going to be attending the CPTA annual conference the weekend before. We have an expert consultant training on a Monday, and then normal board business Tuesday and Wednesday. You can expect in the Tuesday and Wednesday agenda to have a section of maybe a 2, 3, even 4-hour block of sunset draft review. We hope to, as staff, at least have some of the statistical data compiled and put together. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in the EO report as well.
Great. And then the training is for those who have been accepted as applicants for the expert witness.
So the expert consultant training is a combination of folks that have served as expert consultants for this board in the past, and they're taking a refresher. and for new members who have never received that training formally up to this point.
Okay, great. And I'm really excited about being in Southern California again, and I hope that we have a really good turnout for that September meeting. It's going to be a busy week because if you're choosing to go to CPTA meeting, it will be long, but hopefully we'll get some good attendance from
Yeah, I
those
think
who.
that was one of the reasons why we chose to do that kind of coordination, is that we hope to get a little bit of the membership of CPTA that kind of comes around, maybe chooses to be an expert consultant, even attends that training. And then maybe sticks around another day or two to, come and watch the board and its work.
Great. And then no other changes. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just have a quick, is continuing education being offered for the expert training day?
For expert consultants, yes, it is.
And we do give it for our board meetings too.
Yes, for attending of the board meeting as well.
All right. And then no changes to the December dates for our board meeting?
No, not currently. And again, I think that's going to be kind of up in the air based on the polling that we do with you as members. And we'll know a little bit more once we receive this legislative session's questionnaire regarding sunset.
Okay. Any questions about 2025 closeout of the calendar? All right. And Jason, can you introduce any specifics on 2026 calendar meeting?
On 2026, again, it's just a review of those dates. If you have any conflicts that you're aware of currently or recommendations, the only thing that I have to add to it is that we do have a potential host for the March meeting in Gurnick Academy in the Bay Area. The only thing that they've said is they'd be happy to host. They just can't do the first week of March. So we have to consider that, and our dates look like they're in good alignment.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion for, oh, we don't have to.
You don't
propose,
at this
not
point.
yet. Okay,
So
good.
the current calendar has been adopted. And again,
We don't have to do
the
26.
adoption is a bit of a formality. If there's ever a time to make an amendment, we'll bring that back to you. And with sunset looming, I think that's definitely a possibility.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to item on the agenda number 8, Executive Officers Report. Thank you, Jason.
We need to.
Oh, so sorry. We have to complete public comment on this agenda item number 7, calendar dates. Not hearing any in person. Anyone online? Public comment for agenda item number 7.
All right, WebEx is open for public comment on agenda item 7. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Thank you very much. All right. So we're going to go to number 8 now. Thank you.
So the purpose of the executive officer's report is to just report on the status of the board's operations. First, I'll say, it's nice to see all of you again. It's been a while. And to welcome to our new additions. At this meeting, we're looking at the third quarter of fiscal year 24-25. Again, here we are with just 1 week left in the fourth quarter. But we will do an end of the year fiscal report with a 3-year comparison at our September meeting. The first item on my update is outreach. And I'll say quarter 3 was another very productive period of outreach, averaging about 3 presentations a month. We're also seeing some typical trends with increases in our social media impressions that you might expect, increases in reach for TikTok, Instagram, and X, and some slowing with platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn. We've also added Blue Sky and Threads, which is an extension of Instagram, but those are a little too new to really collect any data on at this point. Next, I'll go with admin services. We're still working under the Department of Finance's issued budget letters. Of interest, those letters 23-24 and 23-27 which anticipate a significant general fund deficit in fiscal years 23-24 and 24-25. Those letters state that we must take immediate action to reduce expenditures and identify all operational savings. In addition, this month, the governor's office issued budget letter 2505. And given the fiscal uncertainty of the state, travel in 25-26 fiscal year shall be limited to essential travel to conduct official state business. All out-of-state travel requests will be submitted to the governor's office for approval, and approval will be limited to mission-critical travel only. Discretionary trips will not be considered this year. And again, that's for fiscal and budgetary reasons. For staffing, since our last meeting, we filled our analyst position in the continuing competency unit. May 1st, Brett Argento was appointed associate analyst for the continuing competency unit of the licensing services program. Mr. Argento has a bachelor's degree in business administration from CSU Sacramento, hometown boy. He brings to the PTBC 19 years of experience in vendor supervision, program development, auditing, and interpreting processes and procedures, and evaluating the qualifications and performance of service providers. His duties include development and maintenance of the PTBC's recognized approval agencies database and registry to ensure quality continuing competency providers and courses. So welcome to Brett. Just a reminder about Executive Order 2225. All agencies and departments that provide telework as an option shall implement a hybrid telework policy with a default minimum of 4 in-person days per week, effective July 1st of 2025. So for us, PTB staff will be returning to the office of a minimum of 4 days per week. And I would just take that moment to thank staff for their patience in the logistics and the planning and their understanding of return to office. I would say for us that it has been smoother for me than it has been for some of my colleagues. So thank you for that. Back to board appointments. Again, welcome Dr. Califf. And while that's some good news for us, it's also, there's some bittersweet information in that too, as we add our new member, 2 have departed, right? So the PTBC would like to thank Dr. Alicia Rubina Amen of Stockton for her contributions to the board and the consumers of California. Dr. Rubina Amen served as a board member of PTBC from 2014 through 2025 and as board president from 2018 to 2022. We'd also like to thank Katerina Ellaby of Carson for her contributions to the board and the consumers of California. Ms. Ellaby served as a board member of PTBC from 2013 to 2025 and as board president from 2016 to 2017 and vice president from 2020 to 2021. So again, on behalf of PTBC board members, staff, and the consumers of California, we thank Dr. Alicia Rubina Amen and Katerina Ellaby for over a decade of invaluable dedication and service.
I wanted to say something. Those are really big shoes to fill. And I think that while sometimes we get very discouraged about how government runs, it is a testament to what is going well when you see people dedicated and engaged in what others think is very tedious and not that interesting, but they take it very seriously and they really show a lot of inspirational leadership. And we're very thankful to have had them on the board. And I'm very grateful that I was here while they were here and got to learn and watch because I do believe that our board has some amazing magic and connection, and also has takes their responsibility very seriously. So that expertise is going to be missed, and yet we are loving the energy and the interest and the differences that we get based on the way that the appointments are coming in. And we just want more. So I'm really thankful that they were here and that the system worked well.
I agree. I've been very fortunate in my career to have an excellent panel of board members. And sometimes I will jokingly say when I'm making decisions on behalf of the board, deliberations, what have you, that I have 8 voices in my head, mine and 7 board members. But now I have more than that because I have certain board members that have lasted an impression that they will always be part of that deliberation and consideration. And so I have that as a fortunate side effect, if you will.
I agree. I feel like I think that the nice thing about that is that it informs it to change it in a positive way, you know, and it's forever changed because of people's contributions. So I'll keep that in mind as we move forward.
Here, here. On to application services. I'm not going to report much here. I'll just highlight that we've seen, and as we predicted, the profession continues to grow. We've seen an 8% increase in applications year to year. Again, I'd like to commend staff on their ability to not only maintain their workload with these increases, but even also improve on their own performance measure timelines. However, I can't continue to anticipate that. There will be a point where we'll be able to unable to maintain that performance indefinitely. We'll have to keep an eye on the numbers and plan for staffing increases in the future that are commensurate with the increase in the applications received. Consumer Protection Services, you might remember in the last report that at the end of the second quarter, I reported that we had expended a little over half, almost 60% of our anticipated budget, which was slightly unusual. We typically see higher billings in quarter 3 and quarter 4. But in response, we prepared an augmentation package for the AG and OAH costs, the Attorney General and the Office of Administrative Hearing costs, which was approved for $93,000. An AG augmentation is a legislative authority that allows the PTBC for enforcement costs only to be able to dip into our fund to increase the remaining enforcement line item for that same budgetary year. It's an unusual process, but you can never really predict the number of complaints you receive or how complex investigations might be. And so hence the power that the legislature has given us. This does come directly from the fund, so it will change our fund condition numbers over time. The augmentation will be displayed in our budget numbers, won't be displayed in our budget numbers until the 4th quarter. But as you'll see from the 3rd quarter expenditures that we report today, we're right around 77%, so close to where we should be, bottom line, and maybe just slightly higher in enforcement, right around 78%. Carol Phelps and staff and I will continue to keep a close eye on expenditures and report back our year-end report in September.
Jason, how often have we had to do this adjustment in the past, in your knowledge?
Just prior to the pandemic, we had about 2 or 3 years of augmentation experience. What can happen though is once you set a trend and you're able to demonstrate that your expenditures year to year have continued, then you would do a budget change proposal that makes that allocation line item permanent. And we went through that process, I think in 2019 was our closeout. Since then and through the pandemic, obviously, we saw a decrease in the number of complaints received. The world shut down for a little while. But now I think as kind of a rebound as we're coming out and we're working through those cases, both not just PTBC and our staff, but also the Office of Administrative Hearings, working through the calendar that they have. And even the Attorney General's office was working through and catching up with kind of rebound in expenditures. The augmentation this year is a way for us to determine maybe next year we don't need an augmentation, right? Maybe it's just a blip in the radar, but it is the fiscally responsible thing to do.
So it's not considered a trend to make a budget adjustment until the 2nd year evaluation.
And I think that there's rationale there that if you had a significant increase in that line item for 1 year, you did an augmentation, and the 2nd year it maybe even escalated, that you could start to establish pattern then, right? It could be determined as necessary. It's still going to go through the budgetary change process, so it's still going to be looked at with scrutiny. But the more compelling that your rationale and your argument for an increase is, the more likelihood of its success. 3 years, obviously, then even becomes more of a compelling presentation to those powers that be, to the Department of Finance and even internal budgets here at DCA. The last time that we did a budget change proposal to increase it, we had 3 years of augmentation data to support it.
Does it have anything to do with the cost increase you were mentioning?
Sure, absolutely. It seems like right now, all costs across the board have really increased for everyone, right? Everybody's pocketbook is a little bit tighter. And as such, there is argument to also be said that there's a piece of that justification that would speak to like things that we call like the cost book in California, inflation, overhead costs increase for everyone. But the two main drivers there are the Attorney General's hourly fee, and that's increased over the years, especially in recent years. And then the Office of Administrative Hearings, hourly fees and service fees have increased over the last 3 years consistently year to year.
Okay.
Which causes us to kind of burn through that budget a little bit faster.
And the number of cases is not significantly.
The number of cases has increased this year. So I think that still has a piece of the argument, right? We have seen an uptick in the number of complaints. I wouldn't describe it as anything other than anomalous at this point because I can't establish pattern at that point. And I still feel like there's a little bit of rebounding coming out of the pandemic. I think next year will be a little bit more telling as to whether or not I could really establish that as the pattern.
Thank you.
So to the meat of my executive officer's report, and again, the topic that we've kind of already is the 2027 legislative sunset review. They say that time flies when you're having fun. We must have had a lot of fun because it's sunset review time again, right? It feels like we just finished sunset and we're going to be preparing the report moving forward this year. Our last sunset review hearing was held on March 10th of 2022, where our authority was extended through our Sunrise Bill SB 1438. Our current authority in our practice acts, both Business Professions Code 2602 and 2607.5, expire on January 1st of 2027. I provided you with handouts that contain the sunset memo to boards from last year, as well as the sunset questionnaire from 2025. And we can use that as kind of an idea of where to start with what the 2026 questionnaire will look like. A little about the process. The sunset review process enables the legislature to review the laws and regulations governing each board, assess their programs and policies, and ensure that they're fulfilling their regulatory responsibilities and statutory duties. It also examines the board's fiscal management practices and financial relationships with other agencies. Through sunset review oversight, boards are evaluated on key performance measures, including the timelines of actions and enforcement efforts, and to serve the needs of California consumers while promoting regulatory efficiency and effectiveness. Some things to keep in mind from our going into our sunset process. One of the things that we're expected to do is address any issues that were identified from previous sunsets. So looking at our prior sunset, we did have some of those issues. One that I think is still pending and still very relevant for this sunset process, and that is our fee statute. Currently at our fee statute, we're at our caps. We couldn't increase the fees if we wanted to without legislation. They've been that way for 2 sunsets, so a little over 10 years at this point. We have asked for the legislature to consider extending our statutory caps, not imposing a fee of any kind, but just increasing the caps in case we come across any unplanned expenditures that deem it necessary to increase the fees. So again, because we're going into sunset this year and we have not had an increase in our statutory caps, one of my recommendations to the board would be to consider having that in this sunset report, and it will be a carryover from the 2 previous sunset reports. There are a few other issues that were identified in previous sunsets that we already consider resolved. Issue number 2 from last year's sunset was clarifying revisions to our retired license status, and we have resolved that. We now have a very nice set of language, both in statute and regulation, to account for that. Issue number 3 was a technical correction to a cross-reference document that we had, and we also consider that to be resolved. The other issue, number 4, was an English proficiency exemption for our TOEFL examinations, and we have that as a resolution both in statute and regulation. And then the last one was a treatment plan of care for children covered under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. And through our last sunset bill, we were able to find resolution with that as well. There were some new issues identified in the last report. One that we still consider pending, issue number 2, was a WebEx requirement added by statutory authority for board meetings, meaning that whenever this board convened in business, we asked that the legislature impose upon us a requirement to provide a WebEx or a virtual component in the hopes of engaging the public, not to avoid members being in the room and participating, but just adding another additional point of access for the public. That wasn't granted, but we did have some changes to the Bagley-Keene Act, and we have some, slight modifications, but it's not quite what we were asking for in sunset. The other new issue that we had identified in the last sunset that is still an unresolved or a pending is the executive officer's exempt level position, whether it is appropriate or commensurate with the size of the board. And so that's something that might be that we would recommend. We're going to have to address it as what happened with this issue from the last sunset, to that extent anyway. There was one issue that it was identified as new, but was also resolved in the last sunset, and that was a waiver extension for direct access. There was an extension that was granted during the pandemic that alleviated a licensee's obligation from after 12 visits or 45 days having to go see a physician or surgeon in person. They actually added the language to allow for that to be done through telemeans. And we recommended in our sunset at the end of the pandemic and going into the endemic that that's probably something that we should consider as permanent language, and that was granted as well. The last thing that I would highlight is in the questionnaire that I've given you, just kind of looking at the differences over the years in the questionnaire of interest is section 7, which are questions related to workforce development and job creation. So you can tell that that's kind of a new trend at the legislature. That's something that we'll have to address. And then under section 8, current issues, describe how the board is participating in the development of online application and payment capability and any other secondary IT issues affecting the board. To that end, I'm happy to report that will probably be a very easy section for us to complete. All of our applications are online, and we are able to take payment, through that online portal. But that identifies that this template that I provided you was crafted with all of the Department of Consumer Affairs in mind, every different individual board or bureau. So sometimes the questions don't seem quite like they fit us. And that's the explanation why, is that question might not be intended for a problem that we're subject to. The only thing I have to add to that then is this week, we also scheduled a meeting with DCA and the Business Professions Committee staff for August 13th. I don't know how telling that is as far as timetables go, but I would say that we'll at least have the questionnaire before that meeting, or at least that's what I anticipate at that point.
Okay. All right. I had some questions. Back to the fees, you were saying that's a range, right? We're given a cap. And the last time we raised the fees was what year?
2015.
So it
with the
did
effective
not,
date of 16, right? Yeah.
did we put it into the 2021 sunset?
No, so those fees were captured in the 2016 sunset in legislation.
Got it. And if we were to request outside of it, if it did not get added, we would have to do our own legislation on that.
We would either suffer fiscally, right? Or we would make an attempt to, find an author that was sympathetic to the board's cause and increasing its fees, which can be, very difficult to do. The 2016 sunset is a good example of we were and had at the time a need to increase the fees. And the legislature was amenable to that idea. They incorporated it into that bill, but they weren't amenable at that point into increasing the cap, which is understandable. I think looking at a typical kind of board and its regulatory model, once you increase the fees, you should kind of sit back and, see what happens. You have to, your revenues and your expenditures have to even out with that new fee increase, and you can then at a later date determine how fiscally sound you are or not. We had made the recommendation at the time that while this fee increase was very necessary, because it had not been done in a very long time, that an increase in the statutes might still be appropriate, because we might be, within 4 years before the next sunset, we might find need to increase the fees again. And I'm happy to say we didn't, right? And we haven't even since the sunset subsequent to that. But now here we are, and, we've kind of talked about the augmentation and the enforcement costs and all of those kind of things. Our budget has increased. We're also fortunate enough that, we still live within our means in the sense that our revenues have increased over time too, because your profession continues to grow. The licensing population is growing faster than folks are retiring. So the revenues have increased about the same pace as the budget increases to account for things like inflation and increased costs.
So the increases for revenue that are related to fees are mainly increases in licensees coming and requesting licenses in California.
Correct. So you will see a substantial increase in fees or revenues collected because of initial applications, but that's a one-time, it's the actual renewal fees that increase over time. So that 5 to 8% margin of this licensed population growing year over year keeps up with that pace of increased costs, or at least it has up to now, right? So now we're starting to see signs, indications, if you will, with things like the augmentation, increases in enforcement budgets, where that augmentation is where we reach back down into that fund. And when we talk about the budget report and we say we have a certain months of reserve, right? My level of comfort is a double-digit fund reserve. I would like to see 10 months or more. Right now we're at about 7, 8. In 2016, when we were anticipating a fee increase, our fund condition got down to as low as 3 weeks. We had 3 weeks of operational costs before we actually imposed a fee increase.
All right, one more question for me. I was wondering, you mentioned that the new sunset questionnaire is asking to provide information about our workforce. Is our survey going to be done and completed in terms of the outcomes for the licensee population that was polled?
Yes. And so we have already collected 2 years, a full renewal cycle's worth of workforce data as part of the, not only the initial application process, but as part of the renewal process for our licensees. So the workforce data and even job creation and the interest of it by the legislature showing up in this last year's questionnaire, I would expect it to be in this next year's as well. And we will have a fairly substantial data set to rely upon and pull upon. HCI, the state agency that's responsible for the collection of that data, has compiled and put together a number of dashboards where you can look and take the data of healthcare workers and filter it by license type, PT or PTA, demographic, geographic, a number of different filter types where you can kind of figure out if there are any issues to be identified.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Jason, on any of the executive officer items? No, I would like to comment that I do want to create a committee. Actually, if that's possible, do I have to do a motion to do that, or can I just describe and discuss?
You can do either.
Okay.
Describe them.
Okay. So yeah, I think it would be efficient and effective if in the past for Sunset Committee and also considering the executive officer level, that we consider a couple committees to get this work done in a way that provides again, the most efficient time used and the time that we have between now and when those things are going to be required. It sounds like a two-person committee would have to kind of be ready to go with reviewing the old Sunset and working with the staff. And so I'm going to look for a volunteer. I would like to be a part of that process because I've been working with Jason on it already. But if someone else would like to join me on that committee, otherwise I have to make some assignments.
I would like to.
Thank you, Dale. So Dale and I will be part of that Sunset Review Committee and report back to everyone with the staff and then review those things. And so we'll work together on the schedule that we're available for that remotely. And I guess I can, I'll wait until the second component. I want to hear more about the process for the EO exemption. All right, so is there any public comment on item number 8, Executive Officer's Report? Okay. And is there any online public comment for item number 8, Executive Officer's Report?
We are open for public comment on agenda item 8. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. As a reminder to our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... in order to find your hand. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. All right. I think, do we have still our representatives for agenda item number 9? Yes, is Consumer and Professional Associations and Intergovernmental Relations Reports. And we're going to start with the FSBT, Federation of State Boards of Physical Therapy. Jason, you can start by overview.
For my portion of that report, I'll report on 2 of the committees that I participate in currently. One is, well, 3 of the committees that I participate in currently. One is the Sexual Misconduct and Boundaries Committee. With the help of FSBPT and a number of other states, we are that much closer to putting together a number of resources that the states can use when it pertains to guidance to licensees, to consumers, to educational programs, and even to students. And that information, I would say you can expect to be seen on PTBC's website before the end of the year. We're waiting for one resource to be finished. There have been a number of webinars and presentations. FSBPT earlier in this year did its first student-based webinar nationally. And I think we had almost 800 students in attendance online for that presentation. We've also created a few pieces of video content that will be posted to the board's website and also through social media once they've been approved. The next committee is the Workforce Data Committee, and I think that that's a kind of, relatively speaking, it's going to be an interesting conversation with Sunset coming up and that being a topic on their questionnaire, and us as the physical therapy profession now having a complete 2-year cycle and actually almost a 3-year cycle of data collection for workforce data. That task force is looking at workforce data not only on a jurisdictional level, but a national level, and what kind of collaboration can be done. There's a recommendation of a minimum data set of information that should be recommended and asked when it comes to workforce data, as far as demographics and geographics and specialties and such that are cross-disciplinary. So this is the idea of drawing a template that wouldn't just pertain to physical therapists in particular, but other healthcare practitioners and other licensed professionals for that matter. That I think the end result of that task force will be some kind of collective, if you will, or the ability to create a collective of workforce data that can be actually queried on a national level so that we can look at that data, not just through jurisdictional, but even regional boundaries. The third committee I don't have much to report on is the educational committee for FSBPT. I recently became co-chair of their Council of Board Administrators. And without knowing it, there's an obligation to serve on the educational committee with that role. So I'm now on a committee, and I've had the experience of one meeting now under my belt with them. Part of that is just kind of the logistics and planning of what FSBPT business will be taken up on their annual meetings, both the Leadership Issues Forum and the annual education meeting. And I guess the only part of that for those of you who have seen those meetings or participated in those meetings, the education members get to wear these really kind of nice pastel colored polos from one day to the next, and I'll now be in that either salmon or fuchsia or periwinkle shirt. So
or bright neon green.
yes,
They'll make it very easy to find you.
lime pastel. Yeah.
So I wanted to share a little bit about my experience being a professional member. I've interfaced with a lot of different groups and specifically, had the opportunity to do leadership training, but the regulatory training that I was able to participate with, FSBPT, was really, I felt, incredible in terms of being valuable to the person, whether they're public or professional, in understanding their role, best practices in the function of the board, the form, and what I really enjoyed was interfacing with other states where you had very different practices. The opportunity to discuss why is that in your Practice Act? How do you interpret that? What are some cases that come up that might be relevant or related to the differences that we have across states? And so it was a great opportunity to not only understand what our roles and responsibilities are, but also, the influence and impact we have as board members in these roles to shape and define the practice of physical therapy. And so that's the cool thing. I felt like I really feel like everyone needs to take that program. I mean, and I hope they do have it for other boards and other groups, because they also had Dave Atkinson, is that his last name?
Dale Atkinson.
Dale Atkinson. So he presided over a big part of the training, and he has a lot of experience in multiple different areas, and was able to answer questions and still kind of moderate what was happening in different states and have explanations behind it. So I think it was very valuable use of time, and I'm hoping that we will continue to cycle people through that opportunity.
I agree. We'll certainly try. I attended it again this year for the first time in a very long time, and it was like an eye-opening refresher for me as well, right? So it is right when you think you've done this long enough and you've seen most of everything that there is to see, you realize that, it's kind of that Voltaire saying, I've learned just enough to realize how much I don't know. What I would highly recommend is when the training's provided, usually in May or June, and the reserve is for like first-time attendees first. So if you've never had it or you've never attended it, please let me know, and we'll make sure that you get to represent California in that conversation. And again, for me, it's invaluable to kind of have that context that kind of puts the knowledge set that you learn here into a bigger knowledge set. right? So that you understand it on a national level or even an international level in some instances. So
Thank you. All right, is there anything else on the FSBPT? No? We're going on to the B portion of number 9, agenda item, Department of Consumer Affairs.
we do have a representative from DCA here with us today.
Great, thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Alice Bordikina-Zholobniuk from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for the.
Is your mic
Bring
on?
your mic just a little bit closer.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I will be presenting the DCA update for June. Governor's Reorganization Plan. In January, Governor Newsom released his proposed 2025-26 state budget, which included a proposal to split DCA's oversight agency, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, into 2 state agencies, the California Housing and Homelessness Agency, CHHA, and the Business and Consumer Services Agency, BCSA. The proposed California Housing and Homelessness Agency will oversee housing and homelessness solutions and safeguard civil rights. The new Business and Consumer Services Agency will be responsible for consumer affairs, licensing, and enforcement. The Department of Consumer Affairs would be among the 8 departments in this new agency. We believe this is an extraordinary opportunity for DCA to better align with other consumer protection departments. A secretary within the governor's cabinet focused solely on consumer protection will only strengthen our mission, momentum, and delivery of services to California. As part of the process in state government, on April 4, the Governor's Reorganization Plan was delivered to the nonpartisan Little Hoover Commission for review. The submission of the plan to this commission began an approximate 90-day formal review process. The commission held public hearings on April 23rd and 24th to receive testimony and for interested parties to provide input on the proposed reorganization. Our agency secretary, DCA Director Kirchmeier, and other impacted department leaders testified in support of the governor's plan and responded to questions from the commissioners. In May, the Little Hoover Commission released its full report recommending the legislature allow the governor's reorganization plan to take effect. The legislature now has until July 4th to consider the reorganization proposal. Unless rejected by the legislature, the plan goes into effect on July 5th. As written, the Business and Consumer Services Agency will officially become operative on July 1, 2026. DCA will continue to keep board and bureau leadership apprised. Hybrid telework transition. On March 3, 2025, Governor Newsom issued an executive order requiring all state agencies and departments to update their hybrid telework policies for employees and increase from 2 to 4 days in office per week, beginning on July 1, 2025. On March 13, 2025, the California Department of Human Resources issued guidance on implementation of the executive order. The guidance provides defined parameters for when agencies and departments can make case-by-case exceptions to the 4-day in-office minimum requirement. DCA has been working closely with a few programs on identifying additional space needed for this transition. DCA has been hosting biweekly meetings with board and bureau leadership to provide updates and respond to questions. We recognize that this transition will likely require adjustments for many employees, and we are working together to minimize the impacts. We will, of course, continue to keep leadership updated on any additional direction received from CalHR. Travel updates. On June 9th, 2025, the Department of Finance issued guidance for out-of-state travel in the upcoming fiscal year. Travel outside of California will be limited to essential travel that is required to conduct state business, meaning requests should only be made for mission-critical needs. DCA distributed a memo to all boards and bureaus on June 16, 2025, detailing the criteria for mission-critical travel, which includes but is not limited to enforcement actions, revenue collection, statutory requirements, auditing, and litigation. Additionally, all requests must be provided to DCA's budget office 8 weeks in advance to allow for review by DCA, agency, and the governor's office. If there are any questions, please contact your assigned budget analyst at DCA. We would also like to remind board members and staff of our collective responsibility to always work to minimize the cost to the state through responsible travel planning and scheduling. To best serve the public, it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that we are being fiscally prudent in our decisions, especially when traveling for board business. DCA is reminding members and staff to evaluate if a rental car is necessary versus ride-sharing services. Carpooling is also highly encouraged when renting vehicles. We know that there may be new travel costs board members are experiencing as well, such as baggage charges. So please keep receipts to ensure you can be reimbursed. If you have any questions, please reach out to member relations at dca.ca.gov so that we may assist you. New Compliance and Equity Officer. On April 28th, Levi Hull began serving as DCA's new Compliance and Equity Officer. In this position, he is responsible for leading and coordinating department-wide quality improvement efforts to ensure consistency and regulatory compliance. This position oversees DCA's solid planning and training services, the Organizational Improvement Office, the Equal Employment Opportunity Office, and the Internal Audit Office, and serves as the liaison to the department's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee. As the department's equity officer, this position is dedicated to enhancing the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility policies, trainings, and activities throughout the department's programs. Levi brings more than 12 years of experience in leading multidisciplinary teams and driving strategic program development. With more than 9 years of experience in EO compliance and project management, including nearly 3 years at DCA, he is an experienced leader with a deep commitment to fostering inclusive, equitable, and accessible work environments. So in closing, thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for this? Okay. And do I have to go to public comment on this part? No, not until the end. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. Next on our professional associations, the California PT Association. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Tamika Island with the California Physical Therapy Association. Thank you for the opportunity to provide several updates on behalf of the association. As mentioned earlier in the meeting, CPTA's annual conference will be held September 19th through the 21st in Palm Springs at the Palm Springs Renaissance Hotel. We are excited to have several of your PTPC staff joining with us in our exhibit hall. As for CPTA's continuing education update, our continuing education program continues to grow strong, especially with our signature webinar Wednesdays and our clinical instructor courses. Continuing education goals for the CPTA are that we hold 3 webinar Wednesdays each month, accounting for tentatively 36 webinars annually, 5 online weekend courses in person, 2-day lab courses, one primarily focusing on therapeutic exercise, which was held in April, and 12 CI certification instructor courses. With regard to CPTA's modernization of the PT Practice Act, our update is that we would ensure that the Practice Act is current and allows physical therapists as well as physical therapist assistants to practice at the level of their education and training. This is still a priority for the association when the time is appropriate. There is no current legislation that was introduced to address this matter in 2025. We do hope and anticipate introduction of legislation for 2026. With an update for our current legislation, AB 574, which addresses prior authorization access to PT services, authored by Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez, Substantially, this is the same legislation that was introduced in 2023, which was unfortunately vetoed by Governor Newsom. Prior authorization is not required for physical therapy under the California Physical Therapy Practice Act. However, during its initial 12 visits for a new condition, we are hoping that this legislation would not allow for health plans to require such requirements of providers. Something that was newly amended to the legislation is for a recurring condition. The health plan may impose prior authorization if the individual seeks care within 180 days of their last physical therapy intervention for that condition. This legislation did successfully pass out of the first house, which is the assembly, with an assembly floor vote of 773-1 opposed. It also successfully passed out of the Senate Health Committee on June 11th with a 7-0 vote. It is now referred to Senate Appropriations Committee and scheduled for hearing on June 30th. With an update on AB 1009, school credentialing for PTs and OTs. This is essentially the same legislation introduced by Assemblymember Rubio in 2024. It is now titled AB 2725, which was vetoed previously by the governor as well. The new bill creates a pathway for physical therapists as well as occupational therapists to obtain a credential that would allow them to pursue administrative and leadership positions in schools. The legislation would provide that a valid license to practice OT or PT and verification of meeting a basic skills requirement, as well as 3 years of experience as a school-based OT or PT, may be used to satisfy respective requirements for a preliminary services credential with a specialization in administrative services. AB 1009 did pass out of the assembly floor, 69-0 vote. It also passed successfully out of the Senate Education Committee on June 11th with a 6-0 vote. It is currently set for hearing in Senate Appropriations Committee and was placed on the suspense file due to the associated cost to the state. As always, CPTA appreciate the open lines of communication between our organizations, and we look forward to continuing work collaboratively in the coming year. I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the CPTA representative?
We might ask Tamika to repeat some of that during our legislative report.
Happy to. One last point I just thought of, actually it's a request. CPTA would request, and I don't know if it's appropriate now or if we should speak to it during the legislative report, but CPTA does request this board consider supporting those two pieces of legislation if and when appropriate when you do review the legislation.
We'll ask you to repeat that during the legislative report.
Perfect. Thank you. If there are no questions or
Nope. Thank you very much.
thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, I would like to take public comment on agenda item number 9. Are there any comments online?
WebEx is open for public comment on agenda item 9. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no
Okay.
request, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
There are no requests.
Thank you. I'm getting used to this. I appreciate your candor there. All right, so I would like to break for lunch. We're going to take a recess at this agenda item 9. We will be resuming at agenda item number 10 in an hour, well, a little bit more, at 1:30. Right now, the time is 12:17. Thank you for your participation. We'll be back. Hello, good afternoon. This is Karen Brandon, the president of the PT Board of California. This is the first day in a two-day meeting. It's Wednesday, June 25, and we are going to resume our agenda. Let me see, time is 1:34, and we're going to make a little adjustment to our agenda schedule. We are going to take item number 11 next, and then follow after that with 10 and then 12. So our item number 11 is an invitation to a presentation on exempt level increase process from the Department of Consumer Affairs Office of Human Resources. Can you please introduce yourself, Catherine?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Bachillier, and I am the Appointments and Recruitment Specialist at the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Greetings, President Brandon and board members. My name is Catherine Bachillier, and I am the Appointments and Recruitment Specialist at the Department of Consumer Affairs Office of Human Resources. I understand the board is interested in pursuing a level change and salary increase for Executive Officer Jason Kaiser. To support this effort, I will be presenting today on the process for requesting a level and salary adjustment for the Executive Officer position. So there are two types of requests that may impact the EO salary: the exempt salary increase and the exempt level increase. An exempt salary increase request is when a board requests to increase the monthly salary of the current incumbent. The proposed salary increase would need to be within the existing or proposed salary band of the position. An exempt level increase is when a board requests to increase the exempt level salary band of the EO position. An exempt level increase request in itself does not inherently result in the salary of the incumbent. If the executive officer is not at the maximum salary of the position's salary range, the board can recommend a salary increase, typically an amount that does not exceed 5%, nor an amount that is above the maximum salary range. If the board agrees to seek a level and salary increase, this will require a motion and board vote. In addition, the board will need to agree on a proposed salary increase amount. If a level and salary increase is pursued, a justification must be submitted by the board president. The justification should capture the executive officer's exemplary work performance and the following, if applicable: the EO's accomplishments since the last increase, any changes to the position, retention or recruitment challenges, past adjustments provided, including general salary increases, pay equity with similarly situated positions, position sensitivity or scope, program growth in areas of licensee population or new license types, staffing or budget, changes in programmatic complexity and or operational changes, legislative driven change that increase the level of complexity and sensitivity of work, licensing and enforcement performance measures, or any contributions department-wise or nationally. The request is sent to California Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review and approval, then to the California Department of Human Resources, also known as CalHR. A copy is also sent to the governor's office. CalHR is the final approving authority and may approve, modify, or deny the proposed salary and or level change request. So that will conclude my overview. Do we have any questions?
Sorry, I just turned that off. One of the questions I had was, is it, you said there are two different ones. The salary increase is different from the level increase.
Yes.
Could you describe what the level increase is again?
So the level increase is when you're trying to increase the salary of the executive officer versus the level increase is for the position itself. So if you're pursuing both of them, you would have to, vote for, to go through the motion and vote for a level, increase and a salary amount for the executive officer.
Okay, so there are situations where it's just a level increase and that puts the position, the EO position at another scale,
Yes.
salary range,
Correct.
but it may not actually afford an increase to that particular person.
To the executive
Incumbent,
officer.
yeah.
Yes.
And that would require a secondary one or an ESI.
There's a,
Salary increase.
yes, there's a salary increase and then there's a level increase.
Okay, got it. Two different
Two different ones.
applications?
No, it would just be one request where you're requesting for a salary increase and a level increase for the executive officer.
Okay. Okay.
Catherine, could you speak more to the difference or the need between the two processes? I think that just for context, kind of understanding the exempt level roster and how it's compared to civil service positions. I think that's the kind of the piece that's missing is that, like as an example, I sit into a band of salary that is considered equal to that of a staff services manager 3.
Correct. So when we're talking about the different levels, so there's an exempt salary chart. So you are at level M, like
M.
Mary, which goes to equivalent to a staff services manager 3. There are levels above that for higher levels, depending on, the board or bureau. Some of them are a lot bigger than others. So there is a difference in salary.
Okay. So that has to do with the actual number in terms of the compensation.
Yes.
Okay. And then for our sake, as we're making discussion happen amongst the board, the items that they look at to make these determinations is what we include in the application, identification of a change in the licensee population, total numbers, the staffing required, the budget, any changes legislatively that have increased the demand on the regulation of the practice. And then were there other highlighted areas that you mentioned?
Any accomplishments since the last increase, any changes to the position? Yes, definitely the growth, the staffing, the budget, any legislative driven changes, licensing and enforcement performance measures. So yes, any of the changes since his last increase.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions?
I do. Thank you. I'm still trying to understand. So one request could contain 2 items, meaning that the change of the exec status, right?
Yes, there's 2 items that are going into it. So it's the level change
Right.
for the position itself.
Okay.
And then there's also the salary increase for the incumbent.
Okay. So would that salary increase be based on the current salary or on the new exec level that is approved of?
Okay, a lot of the levels do overlap.
Okay.
So, for example, he is currently at level M, which maxes out at 10,567. The next level up, the range goes from 9,951 to 11,085. So there is an overlap in the salary bands.
Michael Knutz, legal counsel. Really quick, if I may, let's try to refer to the position itself as opposed to the incumbent in the position now, because that can get into confidential employee information. So,
okay.
Just for clarity, I think the point that Catherine's trying to make is while they're 2 distinctly different processes, one is the consideration of the position that the EO sits in and is it commensurate with the size and the structure of that board? That's one assessment. In addition to that assessment, though, can be this conversation of the performance, achievements, those kind of things. It's such an awkward conversation to have in the first place, but that's the part that I would ask the board to focus on, is actually looking at the size and the structure of the board, comparatively speaking, with the exempt level salary structure, meaning looking at, as an example, the typical duty statement for a staff services manager 3, and determine whether or not that's equivalent to what the board believes my duty statement reads, or the structure, and does it actually meet the need or necessity of that position, and even kind of retraining or even recruiting for talent at that level.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is maybe for the new board members too, is that, myself included, of restructure / internal auditing of compensation, position, et cetera, oftentimes happens in a company that is doing its own assessment and reallocation, whereas it is upon us as the board to review and then make recommendations towards that. I don't know if it gets done by Cal HR automatically. And so, and it's my understanding that it does not.
That's a good point. So, and I think I might lean on Catherine a little bit to help me with this one also. So in the Department of Consumer Affairs, there are three different levels or structures, and one being a board, where board members themselves are the primary driver about the assessment of this process, as opposed to a bureau, which is the responsibility of the director of the department and the Office of Human Resources inside of the Department of Consumer Affairs. And then the third being a commission, which again is kind of a mix of the two. So would there ever be a time where Cal HR would intervene and step in and make an assessment about that? I think it's possible, but I think it's highly unlikely. I think it's more driven by the members themselves. It would really be that an issue was identified by Cal HR and they would be addressing that particular issue for them to kind of motivate that. And to that matter, I would say that kind of goes for the Office of Human Resources at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Also, ultimately, it's the responsibility of the board itself to make this determination. So
To drive it.
Yes, yeah. So I do appreciate that clarification for those listening, and also us here on the dais, in that it is kind of one of our many tasks to evaluate and reevaluate our processes as we change as a governing body, and things change over time in different directions, and this is just another way of doing it in a capacity for staffing. Specifically the staffing that we directly impact, which is our EO. So I would now like to call for, I'm sorry, wait a second. Let me see. I need to do, if there are any other questions for Catherine or about the process. We do appreciate you sharing a little bit more about that and kind of bringing it to our attention.
And again, just to clarify, so what is the difference between level M in terms of responsibilities versus the level above? And the difference, you alluded to the difference in pay, but
Yes, definitely a difference in pay. So the level above that would be level L. So that would be equivalent to like a CEA A equivalent, which the duties, there's more duties involved. I don't have the exacts.
It's okay. You can get the job description off of
Cal HR.
Cal HR. I think that's when I was describing, I wanted to know what the structure was. We can always take a look at that online. Are there any other questions? No? Do I need to call for public comment yet, or can I bring up something else? Okay, sounds good. Is there any public comment? Not in session here. How about online?
WebEx is open for public comment on the OHR report. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Okay, thank you. I would like to offer opportunity to create a two-person committee in the pursuit of further investigating this and completing an application if we find that that is something that we have warrant and factual information to support. I believe the last time that this was attempted, it was with our board member Tanya McMillan. I don't know if she would be interested and willing to do it, but I wanted to offer it again to her. Is there anyone else that might be interested in being a part of this committee of two? And Sam Q is volunteering, which I'm very thankful for. So I would like for that committee to meet and review the history of the process in the last years since 2017, I believe, when it was first evaluated. And I appreciate everyone's participation. Thank you so much for your information.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to keep moving on to next agenda item, which is our number 10 Executive Services Update, Legislative Report. Thank you, Brooke.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Brooke Arneson, and I am the Legislation and Regulation Manager within the Executive Services Unit at PTPC. I've been with the state for about over, I think, 18 years now, which is crazy. And I've been with the board for about 11 years now. So as the Legislation and Regulation Manager at PTPC, I oversee policy development, legislative analysis, and regulatory compliance to ensure alignment with state laws and regulations. My role includes evaluating proposed bills, assessing their impact on PTPC operations, as well as drafting and amending regulations. I work collaboratively with stakeholders to advocate for policies that promote consumer protection. And I also provide guidance on laws, regulations, and compliance to help stakeholders understand enforcement and licensing standards. So as Dr. Brandon said, I will be presenting the legislative and regulatory reports for the board today. For the legislative report, we are in the first year of the 2025-26 legislative session. With the appropriations deadline now passed, bills that did not advance are now classified as two-year bills. The June 6th deadline required all bills to clear their house of origin and move to their second house. So looking ahead, fiscal committees must approve bills by August 29th, with the final deadline for each house to pass bills set for September 12th. The meeting materials on page 32 include a chart which compares the appropriations deadline outcomes from prior years. This data shows a steady increase in the number of fiscal bills failing to advance, with 213 in 2021, 306 in 2023, and 337 in 2025. This trend highlights growing challenges in bill advancements, largely due to budget constraints, which continue to hinder the progression of bills, usually with large and significant fiscal impacts. We did include the 2025 legislative calendar in the meeting materials for reference, along with a copy of the board's legislative positions. The materials also contain the 2025 legislative summary, which highlight key bills from the current session that PTPC is currently monitoring. In addition, our in-depth bill analysis for each bill that was provided and listed on the agenda. So for board members' consideration, these bills are grouped into two categories. Number one is the physical therapy board legislation, which includes bills that may impact PTPC operations, physical therapy practice, and regulation. And then we also have a list of department-wide legislations, which cover bills with like more of a broader administrative or department-wide impact to the PTPC. I'll go ahead and begin the legislative summary report by presenting the bills related specifically to PTPC legislation first. The first bill on that list is AB 574, prior authorization physical therapy. This bill would prohibit a healthcare service plan or health insurer that provides coverage for physical therapy from requiring prior authorization for the initial 12 treatment visits for a new episode of care. This bill is similar to AB 931 of the 2023-24 legislative session, which was vetoed by the governor. A copy of that veto message was included in the bill analysis on page 45. We did take a support position on AB 931, and that letter was also included in the meeting materials. Currently, this bill is in the Senate Appropriations Committee with the hearing scheduled on June 30th.
Okay, are there any questions from the board? Okay.
Do you want to move on to each bill?
Okay, yeah.
individually before we
Yeah,
do?
go ahead.
Okay. The next bill on the list is AB 1009, Teacher Credentialing, Administrative Services Credential for Occupational and Physical Therapists. And this bill allows occupational therapists and physical therapists to qualify for a preliminary services credential with a specialization in administrative services. To meet the minimum requirements, candidates must hold a valid license to practice occupational therapy or physical therapy, demonstrate basic skills competency, and have at least 3 years of experience as a school-based OT or PT. This bill, again, is similar to AB 2725 from the previous legislative session, which the PTPC supported, but was ultimately vetoed by the governor. Currently, this bill is in the Senate and was placed on suspense file on June 23rd. The suspense file, again, is where bills that have been identified with a significant fiscal are placed for further assessment and potential hearing by the Appropriations Committee. Keep going. Okay, AB 1458, PT and Veterinary Medicine, Animal Physical Therapy has been designated a 2-year bill and will not advance in 2025. This bill seeks to clarify the nexus and the scope of the Physical Therapy and Veterinary Medical Practice Acts as it pertains to physical therapy performed on animals. We did include a very lengthy bill analysis in the meeting materials regarding all the proposed provisions of this bill as it's currently written. Also provided for the members are handouts from support letters from the Animal Physical Therapy Coalition and an opposition letter from the California Veterinary Medical Association. SB 687, Chiropractors, Animal Chiropractic Practitioners, has been included in the legislative summary and agenda as informational only, given its close connection to AB 1458, which was previously discussed. This bill establishes registration requirements for chiropractors practicing animal chiropractic and prohibits them from providing chiropractic care for animals unless registered with the State Board of Chiropractic Examiners and meeting specific certifications requirements. Additionally, it exempts registered animal chiropractic practitioners from the Veterinary Medicine Practice Act. So like AB 1458, SB 687 has been designated a 2-year bill and will not advance further in 2025. Okay, I'll go ahead and transition to the department-wide legislation section of the legislative summary. The first bill on here is AB 224, Healthcare Coverage, Essential Health Benefits. And this bill expresses the intent of the legislature to review California's Essential Health Benefits Benchmark Plan and establish a new benchmark plan for the 2027 plan year. Specifically, this bill adds commencing January 1st, 2027, the following benefits of the benchmark plan. Specified services to evaluate, diagnose, and treat infertility, specified durable medical equipment, including mobility devices such as wheelchairs and walkers, and an annual hearing exam and 1 hearing aid per ear every 3 years. This bill is currently in the Senate Health Committee. Okay, the next bill, AB 489, Healthcare Professions, Deceptive Terms or Letters, Artificial Intelligence. This bill extends the enforceability of existing title protections for various licensed healthcare professions to expressly apply against a person or entity who develops or deploys AI or generative AI systems that misrepresent themselves as titled healthcare professionals. The bill also authorizes state boards to pursue legal recourse against developers and deployers of AI and Gen AI systems that impersonate healthcare workers. Currently, this bill is in the Senate Judiciary Committee with no hearing set as of yet. The next bill is AB 667, Professions and Vocations, License Examinations. This bill was amended in early April to exclude healthcare boards, so it does no longer pertain to the PTPC. This bill, beginning July 1st, 2026, requires each non-healing arts licensing board within DCA to allow an applicant who cannot read, speak, or write in English to use an interpreter when taking a license examination. This bill is currently in the Senate B&P Committee and set for hearing on July 14th. All right, AB 742, DCA licensing. As AB 742 will only take effect if SB 518 is enacted. So SB 518 is the Descendants of Enslaved Persons Reparations Bill, and it's contingent upon legislative appropriation of sufficient funding. This bill establishes the Bureau for Descendants of American Slavery within state government, assigning it responsibilities such as determining an individual's status as a descendant and reviewing complaints regarding property takings due to racially motivated eminent domain. SB 518 is currently in the Assembly B&P Committee with the hearing scheduled on July 1st. The next bill is AB 1186, Data Collection, Race and Ethnicity, Minimum Categories. And this bill mandates that state boards collecting demographic data on ethnic origin, ethnicity, or race include minimum race and ethnicity categories in their reporting. So boards must gather and publish data on at least the 9 largest detailed categories, which include American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, Middle Eastern or North African, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and white. This bill is dead as it did not pass out of the Assembly Appropriations Committee. Okay, SB 62, Healthcare Coverage, Essential Health Benefits, is a parallel effort to AB 224, which was previously discussed. And this bill also expands California's essential health benefits benchmark coverage to include services to evaluate, diagnose, and treat infertility, durable medical equipment, and hearing aids. And this bill is currently in the Assembly Health Committee. SB 470, Badgley-Keene Open Meetings Act, teleconferencing, extends the January 1st, 2026 repeal date for certain provisions of the Badgley-Keene Open Meetings Act until January 1st, 2030, which would authorize and specify conditions under which a state body may hold a meeting by teleconference. This bill helps maintain hybrid meeting flexibility for state agencies and advisory boards, supporting broader public access and member participation. SB 470 aligns with previous legislation that our board has seen, including AB 1733 and SB 544, both of which PTPC offered letters of support, and those letters are included in the meeting materials. And the last bill on the report is SB 641, DCA and Department of Real Estate, States of Emergency Waivers and Exemptions. And this bill authorizes the Department of Real Estate and boards under DCA to waive certain licensure requirements for applicants and licensees affected by declared federal, state, or local emergency. This includes exemptions from examination, fee, and continuing education requirements for those impacted by disasters. The bill also establishes specific protections for real estate transactions in disaster areas. Currently, this bill is in the Assembly Business and Professions Committee with the hearing date set as July 8th. And that concludes my legislative report. Were there any additional questions that I can answer on behalf of the members?
I have
That
a
was a
few
lot of
questions.
information.
I know. Well, I think we always did it that way, but I'm always like wanting to ask a question right after the bill is introduced. I did want to understand if you can review the change in the information on the new bill for prior authorization, the AB 574. Did you say that it was, did it get passed on? Was it a 1 year?
Yes, this is a 1 year. We did see, it was AB 931 from the prior legislative session.
Mhm.
And that was the one that was vetoed by the governor. So that was in the 2023-24 session. And so this one is very similar. So we did, I believe I included a copy of the veto message. So again, this bill is designed to improve services for patients while reinforcing transparency and patient protections. So overall, the bill does aim to reduce barriers to care, allowing patients to focus on recovery rather than like the administrative hurdles.
And I know that we had written a letter of support based on access for, citizens of California. I'm just trying to understand what was the difference between the 931 and the 574? Was there any specific change?
I don't believe so. I don't know.
Conceptually, it's still very similar. There may be some amendments or changes in language. I think especially from the last legislation, they might have addressed a bit of the cost assessment of the bill this time around. But conceptually speaking, it's the same bill.
It's the same bill. And the governor's veto letter was based on cost analysis because it did pass through the appropriations. So I'm trying to understand.
Correct. Cost and necessity was what was listed in the governor's veto.
Okay. Thank you. Could you look over the essential health benefits listed included infertility, hearing aids? What were the other, and were any of them rehabilitative services connected?
1 minute, let me just pull it up again so I can read 224.
Yes, 224.
Okay, so it was specified services to evaluate, diagnose, and treat infertility, specified durable medical equipment, including mobility devices such as wheelchairs and walkers, and an annual hearing exam and 1 hearing aid per ear every 3 years.
Okay. You said mobility devices, and I think the significance here is for our licensee population and those that we serve, I recognize there's oftentimes a lot of barriers to being able to get some basic coverage. And it could be the difference between somebody who is walking and falls versus gets a cane when they need it. I'm going to have to look into the bill a little bit more to find out what the assessment is, how are they determining who needs it and when? Is there information about that already available? Have they outlined that, is I guess my question, in your assessment?
So as far as, well, let me go through, so let's see. So it says here in, they're adding, subsection E, I through 2. All the following durable medical equipment, mobility devices, including but not limited to walkers and manual and power wheelchairs and scooters, augmented communication devices, including but not limited to speech generating devices, communication boards, and computer applications. It doesn't look like, sorry, as I go through the bill.
Is this a 2-year bill?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Let me go through the bill analysis further and then I can provide that to you.
It's not a problem. It's a 2-year bill, and I'm just wanting to review it a little more closely if it's something that we feel like we might be interested in supporting, but it really depends on the makeup and the nature of the entire bill. I don't know that it directly impacts the licensees. It would be for the stakeholders.
Yeah, and I think similar to previous legislative sessions, that's the perspective that we looked at in our support, was that it created that enhanced or further access to these services by our consumers of physical therapy services. I think there's some direct and indirect kind of results of the passage of a bill like this, where it does make durable medical goods more accessible by defining them in that essential category. So I don't, it's not, for me, it was less about who makes the determination and now that the determination could be made.
Yeah.
Right, that definition is now being broadened or expanded. And then we kind of discussed it in the sense that one could lead to the other, right? Those durable medical goods could actually lead to access that leads to further or greater continuity of care for physical therapy services because your patient or your client at that point is now more mobile, has that accessibility to that mobility to continue their bout of care with a physical therapist. So it is a 2-year bill. Conceptually, I would say it's fairly identical to its previous bill. You know, it's one of those where, as the administrator, it's not going to be often that I provide a recommendation in support or opposition of legislation, but this one is one that I think squarely fits into that's good for the California consumer.
Yeah, and I think that the thought I'm going with, besides the fact that it's relevant in our jurisdiction in terms of the licensee and the consumer, but also remember we just had that bill about determining disability placards,
Mhm.
right? And so it's very often that physicians and other diagnosticians will anticipate an assessment of balance, an assessment of motility needs from their rehabilitation professionals that they work with. And so I was just wondering if there was anything like that already in that part of the bill. Maybe they're not there yet, but something that I wanted to think about. It might affect our licensing population more.
Mhm.
Does anyone have any more questions?
I had one question about AB 1009, the credentialing for OTs and PTs. So I believe we did support this before and then it was resubmitted. So to continue to support it, would we have to resubmit or?
Yes.
Oh,
Because it's a new piece of legislation and I would think that this being the third iteration of this bill, you're also going to see some tweaks being made to it to address issues that were identified in previous sessions, like fiscal impact and that kind of thing. Conceptually, I agree though, right? I think it's the same bill. It's just a little bit more fine tuned for those interested parties that had objection. But if it was the wish of the board to support this bill, it would require a motion and a vote.
would it be appropriate to propose that motion now? Okay. I move to support AB 1009.
Is there a second? Okay, we'll have Dr. Califf second. And are there is there a further discussion? Is there public comment on this motion? Not in the local audience. How about online? Public comment?
We are open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you. Can we take a vote?
Karen Brandon,
Aye.
Sam Q,
Aye.
Dale Armstrong,
Aye.
Todd Kelly. Aye. 4-0, motion carried to support AB 1009.
Thank you. Okay, so in that fashion, do we also have to do a new letter or motion for support of 574?
Yes.
Okay, then does everyone see 574 as the other bill that we have supported in the past? I'd like to make a motion to write another letter of support for AB 574, prior authorization physical therapy.
I second.
Is there any other discussion? Any public comment? No public comment here. How about online? Any public comment, please?
WebEx is open for public comment on 574. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you. Could you take a vote, please?
Karen Brandon,
Aye.
Samuel Pugh,
Aye.
Armstrong. Aye. Paula Click,
Aye.
Tanya McMillan is absent, 4-0, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion for any of the bills and questions for Brooke?
I do. I have a request of consideration for the board to consider issuing a letter of support for SB 470, which is the Begley-Keene teleconferencing bill. I don't know that I think that the language in this bill is necessarily a solution to a kind of a ongoing problem, but it's definitely the best option. If that bill were to sunset, we would not be able to provide any kind of hybrid meeting where board member attendance would be less than every member represented at a local location. So for flexibility's sake and kind of supporting the idea of individual circumstances, California is a very large state, geolocale and that kind of thing. I think not letting this bill sunset and continuing is still the best option.
Does anyone entertain a motion and introduce?
To support SB 470.
Is there a second? Okay, any further discussion from the board? None. Any discussion or, sorry, public comment in the room? No. Okay, we'll go to online. Any public comment?
We are open for public comment on SB 470. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Go ahead and take a vote.
Karen Brandon,
Aye.
Samuel Pugh,
Aye.
Aye. Paula Click,
Aye.
Tanya McMillan, Tanya McMillan is absent, that's 4-0, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to clarify, we're going to get more information on 220, AB 224
Yes.
and how its attachment, which is SB 62, is written. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
I'd like to take any public comment on our legislative session summary. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm G.V. Ayers. I represent the Animal Physical Therapy Coalition. We are the sponsors of AB 1458, which is on your agenda, which you've taken a watch position on, had that in the past, and appreciate that, maintaining that position at this point. Ms. Arneson, thank you so much for your analysis. You did a deep dive on that and appreciate very much the detail in it. And thank you so much. I know the bill is a 2-year bill, and I don't want to beat a bill that is not moving or pound the pavement too much on it. But just wanted to say that this got caught up in the discussion with the legislature regarding this bill and the chiropractor bill as well, the veterinary medicine, and kind of the bigger issue of how's the legislature want to do with other healthcare professions dealing in the animal world there. So there's that bigger discussion there. We've had some good discussions with the committee staff on it. The Assembly Committee raised some issues that we have not been able to address in the bill because the bill's being put on hold, so we haven't been amending it or anything such as that. So there will be some changes, at least even on that front. So there may be some significant changes coming out of the bill of what moves forward. And so anyway, we appreciate your attention on that at this point. Committee staff has also encouraged us to help to inform the board about animal physical therapy, how it's practiced in other states and how it's regulated, such as that. And so we look forward to doing that. We put a request in to make a presentation to the board, focused presentation on this at a future date, and we appreciate your consideration on that. And then also, I think the last thing I wanted to say is we invite you, if possible, if you'd like to sit down and discuss the issues that were raised in the analysis or other issues that you might have with the bill. We'd like to talk about those and see what we can do to work those issues out there. But appreciate your consideration and look forward to further conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment on legislative summary? Agenda item 10.
Oh, that's me again. That's the regulatory
Oh, sorry.
report. 10.
Sorry.
Oh, wait, sorry.
No, I'm still on 10.
Well, yeah, we're on 10A.
10A.
Just a kind of point of clarification, point of order even. I might lean on council for this a little bit. Currently, the bills that are listed today, except for the bills that you've just made motions to support, have no position attached to them as of yet, meaning not even neutral for that matter. So just to make that point of clarity, if the board wanted to take a formal neutral position on those, and council can correct me, I think that you could do a blanket motion that, the rest of the legislative report would be considered neutral positions, or you could just leave it unsaid. But I wanted to make sure that there's a clarity between neutral position or the board hasn't taken a position at all.
In practice, I don't think there's a difference, but if the board wanted to make a motion and express that it was neutral for some reason, you could certainly do that.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, can I go to any public comment online for 10A agenda item?
We are open for public comment on 10A, the summary. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3. And it looks like our first request is coming from Karen Atlas. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide public comment remotely today. My name is Karen Atlas, and I'm the president of the Animal Physical Therapy Coalition. We are a well-established coalition of nearly 60 professional entities and represent a diverse group of stakeholders, including veterinarians, physical therapists, registered veterinary technicians, animal welfare organizations, law enforcement and search and rescue working canine handlers, and the broader animal loving public. And we're all working to increase safe access to animal health care. Specifically, we support allowing California licensed veterinarians to refer their animal patients to qualified animal physical therapists. It's important to recognize that the California Veterinary Medical Association, the CVMA, no longer speaks for all veterinarians on this issue. Many industry-leading veterinary surgeons, veterinary neurologists, general practice, and rehab veterinarians now support our coalition and actually reject their own association's stance on this matter. AB 1458, our bill, is now a 2-year bill and cannot be heard until January 2026. The legislature is taking a broader look at how to regulate all non-veterinary professionals, not just physical therapists, especially in light of SB 687 on animal chiropractic. The bill will likely change significantly, and for that reason, we believe it is premature for this board to take position on AB 1458 at this time. We've also spoken with Business and Professions Committee staff who emphasized the importance of this board being properly informed before making any legislative decisions. In that spirit, we have respectfully requested to be placed on the board's September meeting agenda for an educational presentation. No decisions, just dialogue. This is a timely conversation. Animal physical therapy is a growing field with established practice in many states, and new Model Practice Act guidance for this specialty area will soon be emerging from the Federation of State Boards of Physical Therapy. We'd be honored to share that evolving national perspective. And lastly, thank you for offering remote access. This format helps to ensure diverse voices across the state and to ensure that we're heard, and I hope it continues. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any more online public comments for agenda item 10A?
Yes, indeed. Next, we're going to be calling on James M. Sims. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Good. So the first thing here I want to echo, as earlier said, I'd like to welcome Khalif to the board, Dr. Khalif. And the only thing I need to say to get your favor is say go Buckeyes, I guess, being from the Ohio State University. So welcome to the board. And I've been involved with board activities for over 19, 20 years now. My name is James Sims. I'm a physical therapist, licensed for 38 years, PT, Doctor of Science. I don't know what all you've been doing since 2006, but that is when I first became involved with the animal physical therapy issue. Back when Patty Evans was our executive officer for the CPTA, and Tamika Island, you were, I think, just a staff member then. I think the vet medical board president was Terry Becker, for those who are listening in from the vet side. So I have a long history with this, and you've heard an offer by Karen Atlas in terms of to further inform the board about the history of this issue. We just need to make sure that the board members are fully educated regarding this issue. Back in March, when there was a motion to take on this bill, and it was stopped because Sam Q, you said, I don't know enough information, and that still, I think, is probably true. We need to make sure that the board members are fully educated. In the analysis, it's a very well-written and lengthy analysis. I'd like to commend Brooke Arnston for that work. A lot of relevant information, however, is absent, and the board needs to know the important information, including historical details, so they can make a truly informed decision. And so this watch position, I think, is appropriate this time, as the bill still has to cook. There are two comments, though, regarding analysis, and one of them in the PT impact, the second paragraph on page 66 says the language of the bill does not provide authority to establish regulations or impose fees. And I'm curious as to then how come does BP Code 2615 of the Practice Act, it says that the board shall adopt those regulations that may be necessary to effectuate this chapter. So I think the board does have the authority to establish regulations because it's already in statute at 2615. The last and final comment will be that I invite the PT board to become involved in the maturation of this bill, because where it says the bill does not currently provide clear guidance on which entity, PTBC or VMB, should be responsible for enforcement. I think that's in your wheelhouse. I think that's the strength of the PT board in terms of establishing language in the statute that allow the regulatory process to occur where that can't occur. You guys are the experts in the regulation and of the governance and of the practice of physical therapy. And so I invite your input to this bill to allow what will work. Other jurisdictions have done it. I don't think that their board and their staff of their board is any smarter than ours here in California. And so maybe we can see what they've done to see what works for them, and we can then get it to work for California. I'm reminded finally that the PT's mission is to advance and protect the interests of the people of California. And there's evidence that the people in California want access to physical therapy without onerous, roadblocks to it or whatever. And so the effective administration of the PT board of the PT Practice Act is the role of the PT board, and I invite them and encourage to see what they can do to help make this come fruition for our consumers to utilize physical therapy to service their animals. Thank you very much. And last question. In the use, Mr. Kaiser, you mentioned watch versus neutral positions, but yet in the analysis they used the word watch, not neutral. So I wonder if we can get clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And those are all of our requests online.
Okay. Once again, public comment, we're taking it in and we are going to consider all information, and we're going to move on now on our agenda to item 10B, rulemaking report. Again, Brooke, thank you.
So I'll go ahead and direct members to the flow chart that was provided in the materials. It's on page 115, and it depicts the 4 stages of the regulatory process. So for our continuing competency regulations, we are in that first phase of that chart, the concept phase. And the goal of this phase is that the proposed language is drafted and approved by the board to move forward and start that initial rulemaking process. PTBC staff, we are currently researching and drafting proposed language for board consideration at an upcoming meeting. In this initial regulatory development phase, we are actively collecting workforce and program data to support the creation of 2 very comprehensive regulatory packages. This data collected will be used to evaluate compliance with continuing competency program policies and to identify any necessary statutory necessary updates to PTBC's existing regulations to ensure alignment with the statutory requirements. Our proposed CC regulation packages will be 2 separate packages. One will address the amendments to the current CC regs, and the second will be addressing continuing competency approval agency fees. So additional updates on the continuing competency program will be provided under the licensing report, agenda item 19B. Were there any additional questions I can address regarding the rulemaking report?
No, we're fine on the board. Is there any public comment? Not seeing any in the audience here. Is there any public comment on the rulemaking summary online?
WebEx is open for public comment on the rulemaking summary. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to, thank you so much again, Brooke. We're going to move on to the communications and education update for 10C, agenda item. April, can you introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon. My name is April Beauchamp. I'm the Communication and Education Liaison within the Executive Services Unit for the Physical Therapy Board of California. I have been with the state and the board for 7 years. My primary responsibilities include coordinating and attending outreach for consumers, students, and licensees, managing and updating all PTBC forms and publications, creating and distributing new publications, maintaining the PTBC website, creating and posting content for social media platforms, and overseeing the PTBC record retention schedule. I also serve as the primary point of contact for stakeholder inquiries submitted through Breeze and to DCA directly. Today, I will be presenting the outreach report. So for the website, in fiscal year 2024-25 Q3, the PTBC had a 14% decrease compared to last fiscal year Q3, and then For Facebook, the PTBC received 29 likes this fiscal year, quarter three. In comparison to last fiscal year, quarter three, there was a decrease of 28% in page visits and an increase of 18% of page reach. This fiscal year, quarter three, PTBC had a 30% increase in page reach for Instagram and a 12% decrease in profile visits compared to this time last year. The PTBC also had 37 new followers on Instagram this quarter. When looking at TikTok stats, PTBC had 4,463 new video views and impressions, resulting in a 69% increase compared to this time last year. And then TikTok also had 36 new followers and 19 new likes, which resulted in a 90% increase compared to this time last year. When looking at X stats, the PTBC had an increase of people reached by 53% and a 47% increase of page engagements compared to last fiscal year, quarter three. X also had 8 new followers this quarter. LinkedIn had 2,296 page reach impressions, resulting in a 13% decrease compared to last fiscal year, quarter three. LinkedIn also had 47 page visits, which resulted in a 78% decrease compared to this time last year, as well as 47 engagements, and this resulted in a 27% increase compared to last fiscal year, quarter three. For outreach workshops and webinars, during fiscal year 24-25, quarter three, the PTBC provided 8 outreach workshops to PT and PTA programs. The PTBC also attended the HOSHA Future Health Professionals College and Career Fair at the Safe Credit Union Convention Center here in Sacramento on March 29th, 2025. Cal HOSHA has a membership of over 11,667 students from more than 215 schools across California. It was exciting to be able to be a part of this and see all the students that were interested in their journey of becoming medical professionals, but especially the ones that are wanting to get into physical therapy. So that was really neat to kind of meet with them and see that. We've recently also expanded our efforts to include more consumer-focused outreach, historically one of our harder to reach stakeholder groups. We've begun reaching out to different community centers and things like that to see if they were doing any kind of health fairs, and we actually do have one scheduled in September with another event currently in planning that we'll be also attending as soon as they get all the logistics figured out for that. And that is, again, both of those are consumer focused. We will also be attending the CPTA conference again this year in September in Palm Springs. And then also I'm excited to announce that the spring and summer 2025 newsletter is out, and I've provided you all with a copy of that. And then lastly, the 2025 outreach calendar is again in the materials this time, so you can kind of see what we have coming up. And we do look forward to continuing to fill our outreach calendar with more events and presentations. Do any members have any questions?
Thank you so much, April. I have a couple of questions. What did you notice, or your group notice, in terms of the things that got the most hits? Are you able to divide or describe which content was the most used or utilized or had the most forwards or postings? Repostings?
This last quarter, we did a lot to do with the fires that were happening in Southern California. So I think most of our content was really aimed at that and just getting the word out on that. So there was a lot of hits with that kind of stuff. And then just anytime we have anything new, like the newsletter comes out, we also just updated our laws and regulations book. So things like that happen usually generate more. And then also the events. So even posting pictures from the events, especially with students, they're like, oh, that's me in that picture. So I think they tend to like it and share it.
They like to see themselves.
Yeah. So.
All right. And then back to the other question about consumer outreach. I know that part of what we were excited about at our last meeting was the concept that we wanted to have more California consumers of physical therapy understand what to expect and understand their rights and their and what how we can assist them if they have a concern or a question. How did we get this opportunity with, in coming up in September? What is the hosting body?
It's a senior health fair, and it's through like a mom and pop type company. This is their 11th year of doing it, and honestly, I just started Google searching everywhere. I've been calling community centers, and we were trying to like reach out to the hospitals, but they're a little harder to get into. So community centers seem to be the easier way to do it. And then also when we do the high schools and stuff, we do still do consumer outreach that way. Sarah and I attended one in Antioch, and I remember the students would come up and we would tell them, you know, are you interested in PT? And most of them don't know what they want to do yet. But to be able to show them in the newsletter and like on our QR codes that we give out, like, well, okay, well, look, you can even verify like your doctor, you can verify, you know, your contractor, like all these people that you can verify a license with. And they're like, whoa, that's like, they're so excited about it. And so they're like, I'm going to go look up, you know, whoever. And it was funny because even a couple of them, they have parents who are licensed through various, you know, boards, and I'm going to look up my mom and dad. And so it's interesting and then they take it home and, you know, they give it to their parents. And so it still gets the word out, even if it's not a direct consumer based event. But I am excited to actually have those direct ones now being on the calendar.
Yeah, thank you. I think we take for granted that people understand the process behind the licensure and the fact that a lot of that information is available to them. They can make decisions even before they agree to start care if they want to look up their provider of any profession in California that's licensed. So
Right.
you are doing a great service. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for April?
Maybe in addition, I think in some of the things that I learned in doing like the high schools in particular, or even the career fairs, is that the outreach itself can be layered, right? So while we're there with a particular perspective in mind, advocacy for the regulation of the profession of physical therapy, undoubtedly we're also doing awareness and advocacy for the profession itself. But it did teach me, having done a number of outreach presentations for students and for licensees, that the consumer side of these things is a whole different perspective, right? So it showed me ways to connect the two and even you almost have to have a very quick elevator pitch. And that elevator pitch has to start with just identifying the profession as a whole, right? Because sometimes that's left to like the basic description of therapist, right? They know that they had a therapist, but they don't know if it was a physical therapist or an occupational therapist or, you know, so that in and of itself, I think is worthy of outreach, right? Just providing that guidance. And then, you know, some of the things where, to April's credit, you know, they were verifying the license of their own parents and family members and those kind of things, or their favorite physical therapist because they themselves had physical therapy. And then, as Dr. Brandon said, like what to expect, right? And even using the notice to consumer and answering the questions from that and making folks aware. It's just been I thought we did a good job at outreach. This is just a whole nother galaxy of outreach that needs to be done.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. That brings me to another point. Are we able to start integrating the information about informed consent video from FSBPT with our outreach process?
I kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier in the FSBPT report. Is we will see some of that feathered into our website and our social media by the end of the year. I could do it. I think it would be a little premature. I think it needs to be done kind of in waves where it's all connected. And then there's actually a home resource for it on our website as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it has to have some background, but that will be great when that occurs. And we have the ability to link, or someone can look up that link.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. Any other questions for April? Comments? Okay. Any public comment on this last 10, Agenda 10C? Please come on up.
Tamika Island with the California Physical Therapy Association. Just 2 points that I'd like to make. First, CPTA does have a presence on each of the social media platforms that was mentioned by Ms. Beauchamps, excluding TikTok. We're not there yet. And I wanted to extend the opportunity for us to collaborate if there are updates or important content that you would like to reach or have a further reach potentially. I am more than happy to collaborate with you and your PTBC staff to get that information to reshare. Sometimes we miss posts and things of that nature, as I'm sure you do as well. But if there is something impending that you would like to reach a larger audience, please feel free to let our organization know. We'd be happy to share. We also have an electronic and print newsletter. So again, if there's content that's timely and that you would like to have reach licensees, we'd be more than happy to work with you on language and include that in our content or print materials as well as electronic communication. So I wanted to extend that opportunity. I know you have a number of exciting updates and opportunities coming forward through the end of the year. So letting us know that, we'd be happy to share that in a number of vessels that we do have for communication.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments in this audience here? All right, we'll go online for public comment on 10C, communication education update.
WebEx is open for public comment on 10C. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, April. All right, we had already completed agenda item 11, so we are moving on to our final agenda item for our first day, public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there any public comment for item number 12? None in the local session. How about the virtual session?
All right, WebEx is open for public comment for items not on the agenda. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3. And our first request is coming from Drew Fisk. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
First, I want to say thank you guys so much for allowing me to speak remotely today. My name is Drew Fisk, and I'm speaking on behalf of the California Acupuncture Coalition. I'm here to raise serious concern about the ongoing efforts to allow physical therapists to perform dry needling without an acupuncture license. Dry needling is not a separate therapy. It is acupuncture, both legally and scientifically. It uses the same needles, targets the same points, and serves the same therapeutic purpose. In California, inserting needles for therapeutic effect is clearly defined as the practice of acupuncture. According to the state law, only licensed acupuncturists and certain physicians are allowed. Acupuncturists complete over 3,000 hours of specialized training, including nearly 1,000 hours of supervised clinical instruction. In contrast, dry needling courses for physical therapists often require as little as 20 to 30 hours with no standardized oversight. That is a massive and dangerous gap. Acupuncture needles are FDA-regulated Class II medical devices, meaning they carry risk and must be used by trained professionals. Letting undertrained individuals insert these needles puts patients at real risk, including serious injury. Lastly, calling acupuncture dry needling misleads patients and undermines California regulatory safeguards. If the technique is the same, standards must be the same. We urge the board to oppose any attempt to authorize dry needling outside of the existing acupuncture licensing system. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was our only request for public comment online.
All right, well, thank you so much. We are at the end of our agenda for day one. We will be recessing until tomorrow at 9 a.m. It is currently 2:48 p.m. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.